Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Fell in Love with Female Izuku Midoriya Part 2. Before we start, please go support Anthony Tyler 9 for writing that awesome fanfic. Now let's begin. The talk. Issei woke up on his bed as he tried to remember what happened the previous night with Izumi. He only remembers her hugging him as she cried on his shoulder the previous night. As he continued further to remembrance, he finally gets an image that he never thought would happen. Deep inside me, release that godly amount of hum inside my mom, Izumi moaned out. As Issei remembered that, his face reddened to strawberry levels. Looking to his right, he found Izumi sleeping on his left side as she had a look of adorableness as she was curled next to him, using him for warmth. Rubbing her head, he watched as she cutely yawned as she stretched herself, and her naked body was shown for all to see in his room. Her breasts were out on display as she wiggled her body out of its drowsiness. After that was the fact that there was a mark on her neck that showed a magic symbol over it as she looked back towards him. "Morning," she said, happily leaning on him. "Do you remember what happened last night?" Issei asked, concerned. "I do, don't worry, I was on the pill last night," Izumi said, reassuring Issei that he wouldn't become an early father. "Well, at least nobody knows what happened," Issei said, just as knocking was heard on his door. "Issei, you better get downstairs this instant," Issei's father roared as Issei and Izumi looked fearful. In the kitchen, Issei Hyoudou was making breakfast in order to calm the mood that was settling in the living room. She had seen what her son was doing the night previous when he made the girl they had found a little over a month ago his through Hex, and she was somewhat happy that he had a girlfriend who wanted to do that with him. But overall, she just wanted to make sure that her son wouldn't get rejected after his first time by Izumi, call it mother's intuition, but she would rather scare off her son's girlfriend before she left him with a broken heart than deal with a broken-hearted Issei moping around sad as can be. As soon as her son and Izumi entered the living room, Miki found her husband looking at Issei with scorn that a disappointed father would have for him. But when he looked at Izumi staring at him with confusion as well as worry, he softened himself for her. "I know what you two did last night. Don't call me out for lying, I heard you through the walls. I just want to know if she's pregnant or not," Goro asked, angrily. "I'm not pregnant, Mr. Hyoudou. I was on the pill last night and I was not thinking straight. If you want to blame anyone, then blame me," Izumi said, bowing to the man. "Issei, are you sure that this was a one-time thing, or are your feelings true for her?" Goro asked, sternly. "My feelings for Izumi are pure and nothing else are on my mind about her dad. You can trust me," Issei said as Goro moved closer to Issei. Before Miki could prevent anything from happening, Goro punched his son in the face as Issei hit the floor as he held his face as Izumi fretted over him. "What the hell is wrong with you, aren't you, his father?" Izumi screamed as she pulled Issei away from Goro. "Goro, what is going on?" Miki ran out of the kitchen forgetting about breakfast. "I know a lie when I see it, Miki, our son is lying about his love for this girl," Goro exclaimed. "Mr. Hyoudou, I initiated the Hexwell contact last night, it wasn't Ice, he was completely against it and I pushed him further into it. If you should punish anyone, it should be me," Izumi yelled back. As Goro looked at Izumi, he just couldn't find it in himself to punish her since she was the ideal daughter he could ever have. "I won't punish you, he must have rotted your mind," Goro said, moving closer to Issei. "Dad, what's the big idea? I didn't do anything against her," Issei called out as Goro snarled at him. "Issei, my son. You are the only one left of this family that I love more than most people in my life. But I will not allow you to tarnish this family by stating such false words," Goro said as Izumi stood in his way as Goro tried to punch Issei once again. But this time, as he punched Izumi's face, she didn't fall to the ground like Issei did. No, Goro held his hand in pain as he felt it crack under her face's bones. Goro screamed in pain as Miki pulled him out of the room. "Please just wait in the living room as I get him to calm down," Miki said as she pulled her husband away. Back downstairs in the living room, Miki looked at Izumi as she was looking like she was worse for wear. "Izumi, I need you to tell me about the world you came from. About the life you had before coming here," Miki said as Izumi stared at her in horror. I don't know if I can," Izumi said, looking away. Surely it wasn't that bad, Miki thought to herself, but in order to learn more about Izumi she needed to know. "I know that you don't want to do it, but I need to know to see where you come from on an emotional perspective," Miki said, softly. And Izumi told her, from her childhood best friend betraying her and beating her up every chance he got all the way until they reached high school. Everything that happened in her world all the way until the retirement of All Might, as well as the subsequent battle at the Shihei Kai and saving Eri from a man known as Yasaki Kai, known as Overhaul. Even how she had lost her mother to cancer when she was little, and she was crying at this point. She had even told them about the boy she loved dearly, as if he was her brother, as he rejected her love and made out with her best friend of the high school she went to. As Izumi started to cry at her mother's death hitting her harder than anything that ever could hit her, she then told them about how her father was never in the picture as he left she and her mother long before she was even born. When Miki heard how touch-starved she was to the point that she would take anything in order to feel some semblance of love, Miki stopped Izumi from talking more. "I'm sorry that you had to go through that. Now I only have one question for you, and it pertains to my son's heart," Miki said, as Izumi stares at her knowing what the question will be. "Will you love him unconditionally even if he was a hopeless pervert?" Miki asked, concerned for her son's heart. "Mom," Issei called out, as Miki stared at him with tears in her eyes. "This is Hyoudou, your son saved my life a month ago. He helped nurse me back to health as I fell from the sky literally on top of the park's water fountain. I had surely thought I had broken bones, but only received a concussion that could have put me into a coma. Over the last month and a half that I'd been living here under your rooftop, I had grown to love him. Even though his antics are a bit weird, I had a classmate who was 10 times worse than he was in my world. He never gave us girls a chance to have a reprieve for his perverted antics. Issei allows me some time to myself as well as makes sure that he doesn't peep on me whenever I am changing in the girls' locker room. I can say with all my heart as well as the confidence in my being that I will never reject his heart and accept all of his faults, no matter what they are. He could be perverted to me all the time to where it could be annoying, and I still will love him. Because that is who he is. If he wishes to be a pervert, then I don't mind as long as he uses his time to peep at me," Izumi said, ending her last bit in a whisper that Miki could only hear. After hearing that, Miki couldn't help but smile at Izumi as she pulled the girl into a hug that Izumi definitely stiffened from. But soon after that, Izumi began to cry as she experienced the love she missed from her mother, as she wailed in her shoulder, as she cursed the heavens above for her mother's death. As Izumi was crying, she didn't know when, but Issei had hugged her from behind, as well as the mother-son combo of hugging her and giving her all the love that she lost from her original mother, had put her through so much emotions that she passed out in their arms. Boru was sitting at the table after he calmed down as he thought about everything that was stated to his wife and son about Izumi's world and how she lived. He didn't want to admit it, but when he heard her start to sniffle about her mother's untimely death, he was shedding tears at how she was truly telling them about her world. Then came when she talked about her old friend turned to one of the harshest bullies he had even heard of. Even when she told them what he told her at the last year of their middle school lives, he was shocked at how such a boy could treat his childhood friend with such hatred. Then came how she met her idol and how he destroyed her dreams just an hour after the words crushed her heart from her best friend. About how All Might, the symbol of peace, had told her to be realistic and choose a different position of life because he didn't have the heart to send her without a quirk out to die against a villain. He could see it then of her fighting an uber powerful opponent who was too strong for her as she raced off to fight him, only to be killed brutally afterward. But then came how her life at a school called UA made her life a little bit better with how the number one hero rescinded his words to her and gave her the opportunity to become an even better hero with his quirk. He noticed how the man had told her that went over her head that she still couldn't become a hero without a quirk. So he watched on as she devolved into a blubbering mess as she retold her life all the way to a raid against the Yakuza as they were torturing a child for her ability to rewind anything to nothingness. And that they made bullets to take someone's quirk away temporarily, as well as how one of her senpais of her school had is destroyed completely by a finished product. As the talk devolved into her just crying out her frustrations at the world, he saw who she truly was under the surface of a young teenager with hormones to rival his son. He saw how she reacted to him the first time as he could smell how her hormones were off the charts, showing a pheromone to entice Issei further into her body. He knew that his son wasn't the one having her do this through some method he didn't know, but he did know that his son was in safe hands with this girl, since she was almost as touch-starved as his son in terms of the opposing gender. So as his son and wife had hugged her as she cried her daylights out, he grunted in an effort of an attempt to get out of the chair he was in to go downstairs. Once he made it, he saw the family at the table eating breakfast as he sat down in his chair, and as he stared at them, they stared back at him in trepidation. Soon Issei looked at his father as he apologized for what he did to him, as he never asked him for advice about what was happening the night previous. "Don't worry, son, I was just looking out for Izumi. You don't give out your virginity to just anyone on a whim, for her it was you, and I didn't want her to regret her decision for the rest of her life," Goru said, as Miki understood what he meant. Izumi was at a loss of words for what was going on, since she never got the hex talk to her, she didn't know what he was meaning. "What are you talking about?" Izumi asked, with her head tilted. "Wait, you don't know about how wrong you did?" Miki asked, horrified. "Well, I know I had hex, but is it wrong that I did it with Issei?" Izumi asked, holding Issei's arm scared. "And not really with our son, it's just for a girl like you having your virginity taken is kind of sacred. You should rather have had it taken during a moment of love and passion, such as after your marriage or something similar to that," Goru said, stuttering. "So my first time was supposed to be special?" Izumi asked, fully understanding now. "Yes, but since you lost your chance, we got a bit protective of your relationship with our son," Miki said. "I see, I'm sorry for making you guys worry about me." But please know that when I made the decision to Izumi said, face reddening. I was fully conscious of what I was doing and am entirely responsible for anything happening. Izumi said, as Goru and Miki looked at her softly. You better keep this one, son. She is a definite keeper. Goru chuckled as his wife slapped him on the backside of his head. As the whole family laughed at the antics of the parents, Izumi looked at Issei as he looked back at her as they shared a kiss, knowing that this moment has been dealt with. It wasn't long after that day that hell broke loose within Kuo. Betrayal attacks. Izumi and Issei had been going out for a month now since they had been together and their Hexwell night. Issei had actually shown her that he was an actual good person compared to his friends and was very non-perverted towards her in the time that she was in school and out of it. As for the school, they saw a transformation of character for Issei. They watched from afar as how he went from perverted lustful beast to a boyfriend to one of their most precious girls of the school. Some of the girls had stalked after the duo when they went on dates and found out that none of the actions that he did was even perverted in the slightest. But the ones who saw the transformation from the start, Issei's old friends Mitsuda and Motohama, decided to try the same thing, and they managed to snag women of their own within the first week of not doing anything perverted. It was because of their decision to follow in Issei's footsteps of being better people that he became their friend again, as they hung out doing perverted stuff in quiet. Although Izumi knew whenever Issei was doing perverted things with his friends, she would always be there to keep their antics to a minimum. And so, a month had passed since the conflict between Issei and the Gremories as they were heading to school one night since there was no one around the school. They had decided to go to the school to collect one of Izumi's notebooks since she had been doing some light strategies in order to defeat opponents. And she was just idiotic enough to leave it on campus. Arriving at the school, they were met with devastation as the entire peerage of Sona Citri lay beaten and bloody on the ground. Izumi, having the heart of a hero inside her still, ran off with Issei not far behind. They had been training together a lot more as Issei managed to unlock his balance breaker and increase its power before today. They arrived to a scene that horrified them. Some of the giant creatures were zeroing in on their prey as they made to consume them alive. Izumi attacked the first dog she saw and killed it in one blow, causing the last people standing to look in her direction. Issei killed the other one with a dragon shot, but there was one left, at a woman with large breasts and one violet eye and another being brown. And another woman who stood in front of a man with elf-like ears and 10 black feathery wings on his back staring at them in amusement. Izumi was growling audibly as she stared at the man in the sky, whilst she activated her quirk around her body instinctively. Issei activated his balance breaker as he started to growl as well. Out of their backs were thrown emerald and blood red wings respectively. Emerald for Izumi and blood red for Issei. The woman standing in front of Hikage stared on in shock as Izumi and Issei showed their true forms in front of them all. Izumi launched towards Hikage with her quirks activated as well as her power rising fast. Issei wasn't far behind in activating his aura and magic in order to assist his girlfriend in this battle. The woman with violet eyes and very flat chest watched as the duo had taken on the fallen Cadre class, being with little effort as they teamed up easily against his very improvised attacks in order to hit at least one of them. This was Sona Citri and Tsubaki Shinra as they were defending Kuo from the fallen Cadre from destroying Kuo and inciting another great war between the factions. As Issei blasted Hikage from behind, the fallen angel decided to attack him when he was wrapped around in a black inky substance that prevented him from moving around. He was slammed into the ground as Issei landed in front of him as he charged a blast from his chest as he stared at the fallen angel in a blood rage. Ultimate move Bloody Long Ina Smasher Drake called out from the boosted gear and Izumi appeared behind Hikage as the man saw her land. United States of Smash. Izumi screamed as she slammed her fist into the man's guard, breaking it, allowing the blast to hit Hikage at full force. Grey Hikage screamed out in pain as his body started to disintegrate. Izumi decided to add a bit more power to the attack as she powered up to her maximum power and pointed her arms out to Hikage's slowly disintegrating body as she shouted her strongest blast's name. Infinite Blaster, she called out as her blast clashed with Issei's and with Hikage in the middle. He had nothing to do in order to defend from two different attacks. With him in the middle pushing back both attacks with small amounts of light power he had in light beams, his power was very quickly draining as the blasts moved closer to his position until he couldn't even move an inch or else he risked being killed. You win this day. I will come back through reincarnation, Hikage called out as he was disintegrated. As Hikage's presence was slowly disappearing from the world, Sona watched as Issei and Izumi stood over the remains of the battlefield in awe. They defeated a Cadre class being with little effort. Sona said, astonished. You should be wary of them, they could be enemies. Tsubaki said, as Sona surprised her. This is their territory, I failed to keep this area safe. If they keep this area safe, then there is no reason for me to remain inside the human world any longer. And I need to save Rias from her abusive relationship with Riser before it's too late. Sona said as she gathered her forces and left the human world. As Izumi and Issei stared at the area, they found that Sona's peerage had left them with the damage to the place. As they sighed and started to fix everything there. As soon as the repairs were finished, they returned home after getting the remains of her notebook because she was incredibly annoyed at the supernatural. Three factions move on to create peace. Izumi and Issei was walking around their school when they noticed how Rias and Sona's peerages had disappeared from Kuo completely. Concerned about their devil neighbors, they walked over to the school where they found Saji standing near the entrance of the school looking bewildered. "Hey Saji," Issei called out as the young man looked over at them. "Hey guys," Saji said dejectedly. "Hey, what's wrong?" Izumi asked, concerned for her friend. "It's not much, but today is my last day in the human world. I will be heading to a school in the Underworld by the end of the week and I will be with Sona the entire way," Saji said as Issei and Izumi stared at one another. "Is there anything else you need to tell us?" they asked as the boy looked at them with a serious expression on his face. "Yeah, from what I heard about Sona's leave into the Underworld, she had informed Surziches about what happened between you guys and Rias. Not only that, but how you both are dragons who have been living here ever since before the devils of Citri and Gremory had taken over the territory. Other than that, the leaders of each faction will be coming here to your territory in order to create peace. They know that you both aren't strong enough to defeat them on your own, but they just wish to have neutral grounds in order to make their peace conference be done and over with. They just want peace between the factions," Saji informed as Issei looked at Izumi since she was staring at him. "So long as they don't try to take it from us, I don't mind. I just don't wish to be used for something else. But if they wish to have any other peace conferences, then they can use our territory," Issei said as Izumi nodded her head. "I will be ready to inform Surziches later on. I hope you all have a good year," Saji said, smiling. Issei was taking a tour of the school once more as the women and other males of the school had now become noticeably calmer around him. "Hey Issei, anything new come from your girlfriend?" Mitsuda asked, curious. "Nothing too bad, she just has been looking for Hex a lot more lately. I've been keeping her instincts at bay for a while now. I just hope that she can get a hold of them on her own eventually," Issei said as both boys looked at him with a fearing look. "She's just as perverted as you were," they asked incredulously. "Nope, she just fell into her instincts of wanting Hex every day. I just have a hard time getting her to stop. As much as I love all the attention I get from her, I need her to calm down," Issei said as both of his friends nod their heads. "You speak the same for the rest of us. It's the same thing with our girls. The moment that we had Hex the first time, they became Hex-hungry women. Made us fear for our lives when we found out that they wanted nothing more than to jump our bones," Motohama said, looking away. "By the way Issei, what is the shape of Izumi's ass whenever you see her?" Mitsuda asked, concerned. "It's shaped a little bit like a heart." "Why?" he asked as his friends looked at him in true fear. "Man, that is a baby maker of a woman, how haven't you gotten her pregnant yet?" Motohama yelled as Issei looked at them concerned. "What the hell are you talking about?" Issei asked, confused. "Issei, when a woman walks around like Izumi does, you can see her ass sway side to side with grace. Not only that, but if her thighs are as big as I think they are in class, then that means that those thighs she has are actually love handles. It means that whatever you do, don't get her pregnant within the last year of school," Motohama said as he stared Issei in the eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" Issei asked, concerned. "Because Izumi's body is for baby making, she will literally squeeze out around 10 children if you try hard enough, maybe even 20 if you're lucky," Mitsuda yelled. "What are you three boys yelling about?" a woman asked, looking at them. "Just talking about Izumi. Apparently, she has the baby-making body for a woman," Issei said. "Well, that is true," the woman said as Issei stared at her in disbelief. "My name's Kiryu, and I have been around Izumi long enough to know that yes, Mitsuda and Motohama are correct in their assumption that your girl Issei is a true baby maker in women. At best I believe that if you wanted to, you could squeeze out around 15 children from her body," Ika said, smirking. "And let's not forget the fact that you're a baby-making male as well. So it's a surprise that neither of you have even gotten a kid yet with how much you buck," Kiryu said, laughing. "Hey, she is on the pill," Issei said, defending his girlfriend. As soon as he left the area, he walked over to Izumi as she was swaying her hips at him and he was entranced by them. "I really need to fix my perverted issue," Issei mumbled as Izumi hugged his arm. "It's been a long day," Izumi said, smiling at him. "Hey, I'm not sure about if you know this, but are you a baby maker in terms of women?" Issei asked, concerned if his question was a but too on the inappropriate side of a conversation. "Yup, I am one, which is why I have to take 2 pills in order to prevent me from getting pregnant right now. I just hope that we last until our final year at least before I get pregnant," Izumi said as Issei nodded his head. "Well, at least I know why you take 2 of those pills," Issei said as Izumi nodded her head. They arrived near their home when a magic circle appeared in front of them, and it was revealed to be a man in golden armor on his shoulders with a red cape with black on the outside. He had teal-colored eyes, but his hair was the most notable feature about him. It was completely crimson red in color as he looked around the place as if he was searching for someone. "I know that their energies were around here somewhere," the man mumbled. Izumi looked at Issei as he shrugged his shoulders as they continued their walk over to the man. "Are you searching for someone?" Izumi asked, stuttering. Ah, there you both are. I've been searching for the both of you," the man said as he used a magic circle to teleport them away. Appearing in a hotel, they found the man with a woman in a maid's uniform with white hair and blue cold eyes. "Grafia, these two are the dragons in charge of Kuo stated by Sona," the man said as the woman now known as Grafia moved closer to the duo. "Hello you two, I am Grafia Lucifuge Lucifer. And I am the wife and queen of Surzich's Lucifer, the king of hell, as well as the man behind you both," the woman said, bowing to them. "Nice to meet you, my name is Issei Hyoudou and this is my girlfriend Izumi Midoriya. She is a full dragon whilst I am only 50% dragon, but it's only a matter of time before I become a full dragon," Issei said, bowing as Izumi did the same. "Nice to meet you as well, we were wondering if we could use the school in order to make our peace treaty. We will need to inform some other leaders in order to make sure that the peace treaty will be ready to be done in a few days' time," Surzicha said, getting right down to business. "If you wish to use some place for a council meeting about peace, then we both know the perfect place to do the conference," Izumi said, smirking at them. "Where would it be?" Grafia asked as she looked suspiciously at the duo. Arriving in the middle of the forest, the two leaders of the Devil's faction found themselves inside of a small building that was built. "What is this place?" Surzicha asked, in awe. "This is the place where I was transported from the world I originally came from," Izumi said, staring at Surzicha and Grafia. "Why, you're from a different world?" they both asked, a little suspicious. "Yes, me and Eri-chan are not from this world. Or at least this version of the world. We come from a world where quirks, abilities that we gained from around this point in time and were upgraded over the years to where only 80% of the human population had them." Izumi started as both of the leaders looked at her in awe. "Were you a part of the 80%? Grafia asked. "No, I was part of the 20% that was quirkless. I was given a quirk by my master, All Might. He was the strongest hero in the world at the time, and I had impressed him with my selfless sacrifice to give my life to save a bully from being killed by a villain without a quirk," Izumi said as Issei wrapped an arm on her shoulder. "I see, are you capable of going back to that world?" Surzicha asked curiously. "No, I haven't been able to find a way back. And I don't think that I'd be capable of doing so since it was so far in the future that you'd all probably be dead from wars or something," Izumi said as Surzicha asked the million-dollar question. "What year was it when you came here?" "I was in a raid to save Eri-chan and bring her back to the world of heroes. But on the way I ran out of stamina as well as endurance and passed out. I was brought here by a villain named Kurogiri. He had a portal quirk that allowed him to teleport away from any and all danger. But he mistakenly took me and Eri to this world and somehow she was aged up to 15 and I was 16 before coming here and now I am 17 like Issei," Izumi said as everyone nodded their heads. "Well, this seems like the perfect spot. We will inform the leaders of each faction in order to come here and not tell anyone else in their group to do so," Surzicha said as he disappeared from the world. "Are you lying to them about coming to a forest when you came to this world? If I remember correctly you fell into Kuo Park's fountain if I remember correctly," Issei said as Izumi moved a bit ahead of him. "Don't worry Issei. I saw this place before I fell into that fountain. Also, I need to show you something tonight," Izumi said, smiling. I need an adult," Issei said as Izumi smiled even more at him. "We are adults," she said as they walked home. Peace conference. Izumi and Issei were walking around the town of Kuo as they had let the information about Sona leaving the territory to them in their hands. They didn't know a single thing about keeping a territory safe and they were just trying to see what happens in the night on the days before the upcoming leaders summit. During that time, they had run across stray devils, rogue devils that wanted to take over the territory and some who just came to visit the place. All of which were taken seriously, but when the summit came for the leaders to be present at the conference between the three factions, they all appeared where Surzicha had told them the coordinates. What they found was a tall building in the middle of the forest, as Izumi and Issei were outside sitting on a bench that they'd made for themselves. "Where is the meeting being held at?" Azazel asked the duo as they stared at him before telling him. "Third floor on the right. There is a bathroom next to the meeting room a few feet away in case of a bathroom break being needed," Issei said as Izumi nodded. "Well, don't mind if I do. Have a good day, little drakes," the fallen leader said, walking through the doors. "Little drakes?" Issei asked. "That is what you are, a young dragon. The leaders of the factions around the world would refer to a young dragon as a little Drake Issei. I hope that he wasn't referring to your girlfriend as well. Bragg said, giving some info on the dragon race. Well, that info was really needed. Do you want to head inside in order to meet the other leaders? Izumi asked, looking towards Issei. Sure, just wait outside for a few more moments in case someone else is coming to the meeting. Issei said, and sure enough a man with silverish white hair stared at Issei with his cold blue eyes. I am here with Azazel. I was supposed to be here in order to represent a neutral power within the three factions. The young man said, as he stared at Izumi. You're not invited. You can leave. This is for the leaders of the summit as well as those in charge of the territory you're in White One. Izumi said, growling. Sheesh, was just joking. I will leave. See you later Red One. The young man said, as Izumi reinforced a barrier around the building. Is that really necessary? Issei asked. Young Issei, I really hope that you're not that retarded. Because if you are, I could smell the malicious intent coming from him and I'm not even alive. Drake said, as he smacked Issei with Issei's own arm. Oh geez, I was only kidding, Issei complained as Izumi stared at him with a single thought in her mind. How did I fall in love with this idiot? 3. Inside the meeting room, Azazel was getting to reunite with the devils as he was on good terms with Surziches over the years during the peace. You know, I never took you as someone who adopted some dragons, Surziches. Azazel teased. Please, they aren't adopted by me. They are the children of humans living in this town. My little sister indirectly caused the near-death experience of one of them, whilst the woman out there with the red dragon emperor had saved his life from one of your forces. Surziches said, as that confused Azazel. What do you mean by that? The fallen leader asked, confused. One of your weaker fallens had attacked Issei Hyoudou on a date. They nearly killed him, and from what the information stated about her, she was nearing her ability to get a second pair of wings before being taken out by Izumi Midoriya. Surziches said, as Azazel immediately sighed. I can't believe that she ignored my direct orders. The fallen leader sighed. What was her mission? Surziches asked. The only mission I gave her was to keep an eye on the Red Dragon Emperor's new host and give me some information about him. Not to go out of her way to kill him. I really need to check the leash on my subordinates. Azazel said, muttering the last part. Well, you're lucky that Izumi Midoriya was there with Issei, otherwise he would have died. Surziches said, as Azazel nodded his head. So, when is my brother going to arrive? Azazel asked to no one in particular. Sorry for being late, I just couldn't find my way around this mansion. The final part of their meeting said, finally showing up after having been an hour. You're late little brother, how has heaven been treating you? Azazel asked, looking at the blonde-haired man with teal-colored eyes. It's been a while brother. And heaven is going fine, except someone stole the spear that killed Jesus Christ. The man said. Someone actually stole the true Longinus. That is actually impressive. Azazel remarked. Well, now that everyone is here, Azazel, you need to tell us what was on Hikage's mind when he tried to attack Seraphal's little sister. Surziches said, getting the meeting underway. I will promise that when I say this I had no idea what was going through his mind until the battle had already started. Hikage was trying to incite the Great War to begin once again. But since he was killed by our resident Dragonkin, it is no longer a how do you say it problem. Azazel said, smirking smugly. What would have you done had Hikage managed to kill Seraphal's little sister? The blonde-haired man asked. I would have resigned from my position as leader of the fallen angels, as well as given it to either Barakiel or Shemhazai. Azazel said, looking at his respective leaders. Well then we should move on to our next mode of conversation. How did the pieces of Excalibur get taken from the church? Surziches asked the blonde. I had no idea that they would get stolen. They were inside the most well-protected church inside the Vatican. I have no words for how that happened. The man said. Michael, you really need to think outside the box. Who was the last one in charge of the place before he fell? Azazel interjected. Hikage. The now named Michael said. Yup, he just had to use his reputation in order to get them out of there. And the rest is history, although I personally believe the Kiba boy under your sister's wing should have been the one to strike Valper Galilei down. Azazel said. He hasn't stopped complaining about it back in the House of Phoenix. Surziches said, as Izumi entered the room with her hair frazzled. Hey Surziches, before you guys get this peace meeting underway, do you know what became of Eri? Izumi asked, a little scared for the little girl she protected in her world. From what I know, she is being treated like a little sister by Riser. He is treating her with kindness as well as making sure that she is safe within his home. He hasn't done anything that shouldn't be done to her because of her very young age. Surziches said, stoically. Thank you. I have been worrying about her lately since she never returned back to the human world. Izumi said, as Surziches nodded his head. Issei then walked into the room as he looked over at Azazel and gave him a nod before telling them his and Izumi's perspective of the fight against Hikage, as he told them that fighting him was oddly really easy and satisfying to hear him go pop. As the meeting continued, without Issei's shenanigans, they eventually found that peace was just a signature away when the whole building had shaken. Well, that means that the enemies had arrived. Izumi said as she moved towards the door. What? Who is attacking us? Michael asked, concerned. The Chaos Brigade. Azazel said, causing everyone to look at him. They are a group of different factions working together to bring the world to an end. I had only heard about them by sheer luck as well as in rumors, but to hear that we're being attacked right now. I have a firm belief that they're attacking us right now. We need to sign this paper and send it to each faction. Azazel said, ending the conference as he signed the paper. As Izumi and Issei left the room, Surziches and Serafal had signed the paper as Michael had begun to read through the paper in order to find anything that would put him in a disadvantageous position. Izumi and Issei walked outside the front door to the building as they saw the White Dragon Emperor slamming his fist into the barrier. You won't keep me out of here, he called out as Issei entered his balance breaker form in order to end the fight before it began. Keep the magicians busy, sweetheart, Issei called out as Izumi's face became red from the nickname. Sure. Izumi said, slowly transforming into a dragon as she stared at the magicians. So you've come to fight me, Red One? The young man asked. What's your name? Issei asked. My name is Vali Lucifer. And you will be my opponent, Red One, Vali called out as he transformed into his balance breaker form. As they clashed fists in the sky, Izumi was dealing with an endless horde of the magicians as they kept appearing around the sky whenever she killed 40 of them. And whenever she killed around 50 people, another 100 would arrive via magic circle and blast her from another direction, causing her to be a little angry. As they were fighting the enemies, the rest of the faction's leaders arrived outside to see the carnage as they found a large Western Emerald-scaled dragon battling some magicians as it was slowly losing ground because of the sheer numbers. As for Issei, he was faring quite well against Vali as the young man was being punched out of his balance breaker every single time he reformed the armor. Should we help them? Azazel asked curiously. You will not be helping them as you will be killed by me, a woman called out. She had tan-colored skin as well as purple-colored eyes. She had a buxom figure that most women would die for as she stared at Azazel. Well, if it isn't the descendant of the Leviathan family. How has it been, little Kateria? Azazel taunted. You will not refer me to that little name. I have grown stronger since we last met and I will kill you all, she called out, blasting some water at the faction leaders. You are aware that your power is only in the leagues of ultimate class, right? Serafal asked as she stared at the Leviathan heir. You are a mere peasant compared to me, Serafal, you are a fake Leviathan, Kateria called out, using her water powers. As the two Satan-class beings fought in the air, Izumi had finally defeated every single magician as she went back to her human form. She looked at her chest as she became very self-conscious about her body type. Looking back in the air, she watched as Issei defeated his opponent as well as the young man landed in the dirt on his back. As Issei was looking towards her, another man arrived taking Vali out of the area, but to Izumi the young man across from Issei was nameless. After dealing with their enemies, Izumi walked over to Issei as they watched Serafal and Kateria battle it out in the air. Die, Serafal, Kateria called out, launching a large water-based attack at Serafal. Only for the attack to be immediately transformed from water to ice and have it blasted back to her, piercing her through the chest. Gwa, Kateria coughed up blood. I didn't want it to come to that, Kateria, you left me no choice. Serafal said as Kateria pulled out a small vial with a black snake inside. You're stronger than I thought you were. No matter, I will have your dead head in my hands and I will kill you with the added power from the infinite dragon god, Kateria called out as she drank the black snake. Kateria moaned out as her power skyrocketed into that of Satan class. It wasn't that much of an upgrade but was slightly better than Serafal's overall power by just a smidgen. As the two women charged at one another in the sky, gusts of air were thrown about from their punches and kicks, connecting with the perfect blocks of their enemy. It all culminated in a power struggle as Serafal had blasted Kateria with all her power as she launched a demonic beam at the woman that Kateria had reciprocated back at her. Izumi stared at the battle as she noticed some weakness coming from Kateria that she decided to take full advantage of. Pulling out a finger and pointing at the woman's chest from behind, a small beam of super powerful light came flying towards the woman's back as it pierced through her lower abdomen as well as came out through her chest. As soon as that happened, Kateria looked back distracted from her beam struggle with Serafal and seen some smoke coming from Izumi's finger, which is when Kateria noticed a searing pain in her chest as she looked down at it. A hole where her heart was supposed to be there, and her heart was hanging by a mere thread as it was snapped off the vein that kept it hanging there. And as soon as that happened, Kateria's power started to decrease exponentially, giving Serafal the immediate power to defeat Kateria as the blast consumed the woman. As Kateria's body was becoming overloaded with the power of office, the beam kept going far out into the distance until near Mount Fuji, a huge explosion happened creating beautiful fireworks. Now that is a good July 4th. Izumi said, as Issei started laughing. What is so funny? Serafal asked, as she landed near the couple. Where Izumi reiterated what she stated to Issei and caused everyone present to start laughing. With the defeat of Leviathan, the enemies that will be coming will get more and more powerful. Are you sure you don't wish to join a faction? Azazel asked. As Izumi and Issei stared at one another, they had heard of some dragons being in the world that wanted a land to live in, and Issei had thought of making a dragons faction in order to bring them back to their former glory. Do you guys have land where dragons can live and thrive? Izumi asked. As that question was asked, everyone looked over at Surziches as the man stared at the young couple with a smug smirk on his face. Not being enough, Izumi and Issei was walking through the town of Kuo. She had a lot on her mind as she constantly glanced over at Issei during their walk. Issei noticed her glances as well, and he didn't know what was going on with her. Izumi, is there something wrong? Issei asked as he stared into her emerald eyes. And not really, just feeling a little self-conscious. Izumi said, mumbling the last part. What do you have to be self-conscious about? I have never seen you act like this. Issei asked, worriedly. It's just that, why did you come after me? I'm not all that good looking. I have smaller boobs than most of the girls at school. I am shorter than most girls of our school as well. Not only that, but our enemies that we fought yesterday had bigger boobs than me. Izumi said, as Issei watched as tears came trickling down her face. It was really hard for him to see her like this. The last time she was like this was when she found out that Eri had been here for years and Izumi didn't arrive until later on last year. To make matters worse for her, she felt self-conscious about how her body looked compared to most women around Issei as he fought them as well as interacted with them as well. So her feeling a little jealous about how others' bodies look was something to prepare for, but he couldn't imagine that she could be so self-depreciative about herself. Who put it into your mind that you're not as good looking as everyone else? Issei asked, no demanded. Kaken. He was my crush from the world I came from. He was the pinnacle of victory as well as never giving up, and he was my hero there. Izumi said, as both she and Issei found a bench to sit on. When did he tell you that you're not worth looking at? Issei asked, angrily. Ever since I was 11 years old when my body started to develop. I was thinking that I looked good at that point in time when he came up to me and told me that I was one of the ugliest girls in our school there. Izumi said. As Issei was about to give her his answer for what she looks like, she just continued. He told me that every day, not only that, but he beat me up, destroyed my notebooks, told me to kill myself. He even tried to, Izumi said, stopping as she didn't wish to relive that horrible day. As soon as she stopped talking at the last part, Issei was livid that such a person could live and become a hero in her world. How did he even get into UA Academy? Issei asked. The entrance exams are tailored to those who have flashy and destructive quirks. Izumi said. So the teachers and principal of the school there only cared about flashy quirks? Issei asked, looking at her. Not exactly, but the principal was more inclined to be interested in those whose quirks wasn't meant for battle, but meant for strategy instead. The ones who were more interested in flashy quirks was the school board. They only care for flashy and powerful quirks. That is what society in my world had come to. But I didn't get the worst of it until the dorms came up after Kaken was kidnapped by the villain group, the League of Villains. They wanted him to become a villain with them. He acted like a villain all the time in school, so they thought that it would be easy to turn him during that time. Izumi said, as Issei asked one more question. I'm guessing that his love of heroes was keeping him from turning. Issei asked. Yeah, he told them to, and I quote, buck off and die. I don't need you villains to become #1 hero in Japan. And then he ran off after exploding the area around him where I came out with Kirishima and Shoto, just in order to save him. Izumi said, looking at Issei. Well, you don't have to worry about being ugly here. I will be ugly with you if you're thinking that way. I care about you more than you think. Did Kaken ever tell you he loved you? Issei asked, as Izumi shook her head no. Did he ever tell you how good of a job you did in controlling your quirk? Issei asked once more. Another shake of her head no, and he was starting to get a picture of who the boy was, and he couldn't wait for the moment that he saw the bucker, since the first thing he'd do would be to punch the young man in the face. Izumi, no matter what you might think about yourself and your body, I personally think that you're one of the most beautiful women on the earth, and anyone who simply told you that you weren't was a goddamn liar. Your personality might get a little too much when it comes to analyzing your opponents with your muttering, but it is because of that muttering that you are endearing. I personally believe that the muttering of yours is adorable and that you should do it more often. But I fell in love with you because of the fact that you are the one person who ever liked me back, and not only that, but you can handle my perverted antics better than anyone else. You even managed to tame me, the sin of lust compared to demons, Issei said, laughing. It wasn't that hard. Izumi mumbled as she looked away. Don't worry about the little things, you will just get hurt doing that. I worry about your mentality mainly because of the fact that your mind, while being heavily guarded, is one of the easiest things to break because of your past. Being bullied is not okay, and being beaten until near death isn't fine either. The way you were treated was not okay by every one of your peers as well as teachers of each school you went to before entering a hero school. And I hope that you continue being the cute, adorable muttering young lady that I fell in love with from the moment you dropped out of the sky from Chicken Little. Issei said, causing Izumi to laugh out loud at the reference. Should we head back home? Izumi asked, as Issei nodded his head as he held her hand in his as they left the park. As they were about to enter Issei's home, they heard footsteps coming up behind them as when they turned around, they found a green-haired woman with light blue eyes standing right behind them, both with very large breasts taking heavy breaths. Finally, I have found you. Oh, Buck, the girl said, breathing heavily. Issei and Izumi had looked at one another before looking back at the girl in confusion. Who are you, miss? Issei asked, as the girl ran over to Issei and hugged him close to her chest and placed his face inside her cleavage. I'm Hikage. I can't believe that you forgot about me, Ice-chan. I can't believe that you got a different girlfriend when you told me when we were younger that you would marry me, the woman called out, still hugging Issei. Izumi and Issei called out confused. Hikage enters the scene. Issei was watching the scene before him develop as Hikage and Izumi were seen talking to one another as he looked confused as to what was happening before himself. When Izumi stared at Hikage when she was hugging him, Issei thought his life flashed before his eyes when Izumi pulled Hikage off of him and pouted at Issei for that information that was lost on him. As Issei watched him talk it out, he called out his boosted gear in order to find out what the buck was going on. Drag, a little help here. I don't want to die, but it seems like things are coming together for a moment right now, but what the buck is happening? Issei asked, urgently. As far as I know, I have no idea what is going on, partner. From what it looks like they are getting along fairly well, but that could be a facade in order to get you to lower your guard. Drake said, as he stared at Izumi through Issei's eyes. I feel like I am going to be in danger in the future for children. Issei muttered. I know how you feel, partner, I had the same feeling when Tiamat found me and tried to get me to give her a child. Drake said, shuddering inside the boosted gear. As the two males in this relationship were having their life conversation, Izumi and Hikage were talking to one another as if they were long-lost friends. So, how did you get Issei to say that he was going to marry you? Izumi asked, curious about their relationship. Oh, he said it when we were like 5 years old, so he probably doesn't even remember it. Not like I'd let him since it was my most embarrassing moment in my life. Hikage said, looking away, a hint of blush on her cheeks. Well, Issei's changed since then. He wants to have a harem right now, but it's a little hard to get him to converse with other women because of a fallen angel named Raynare. Izumi said, as Hikage looked in confusion. What do you mean? Who's Raynare? Hikage asked, urgently. Raynare is a fallen angel from the Grigori that was sent out to watch Issei and make sure that he doesn't become a threat to the supernatural world. And on her watch, she decided to ultimately kill him since he held a sacred gear, not that she knew which one he had. Izumi said, as Hikage's breath hitched. When I find her, I will make sure that she pays for her insolence, Hikage said, angrily. You won't have to worry about her anytime soon. I have already disposed of her in order to get her free of this town. Izumi said, as Hikage looked intrigued. So, what makes you think that you could take on a fallen angel and win? Hikage asked, curiously. Well, the fact that I'm not from this world, nor town for one fact. As for the other, I am a full-blown dragon. What do you think was going to happen? Izumi asked, as she stared at Hikage. Noted, well, now that we don't have to worry about a certain fallen, what about the other devils in this town? From what I knew, the ones in charge here was Rias Gremory and Sona Citri. Hikage asked, as Izumi explained the events that went down here, and Hikage was a little angered at the fact that Rias tried to force the both of them to become devils. Well, I will make sure to slap Rias in the face next time I see her. Hikage said, as Izumi nodded her head. Can you tell Sona that she can have her territory back? Me and Issei will be leaving the town soon since he wanted to move into his own territory within the dragon's territory in near the Gremory estate in the Underworld. Izumi said, as Hikage nodded her head. Will do, when I go back there again I will inform her about the decision. Rias will want to come back here as well, so I will make sure that she is under watch for her actions within the territory once again. Hikage said, as Izumi nodded before going to the juicy bits. So are you wishing to become a member of his harem? Izumi asked, as Hikage looked at her and smirked. You wouldn't like to know the things I do to that boy. She said, as we moved back to Issei and Drake. Drake, what is the odds of survival? Issei asked as he watched Izumi walk over to him. Odds are that you have a 50% chance of death and 50% chance of getting laid with both of them. Drake said, as he saw the emotions inside Izumi's face. What? Issei asked, confused. You're as dense as a pack mule. They are planning on either killing you now or having Hex with you in order to see who should be in charge of the harem that you're slowly building. Drake said, spelling it out for Issei bluntly. Oh, well, it's been a good life. At least I was able to lose my virginity before dying. Issei said as Izumi stood before him. Compared to him, in terms of height, Izumi wasn't all that intimidating since she was shorter than Issei by more than a few inches, especially since she only reached his chin in terms of height. As for Hikage, she was perfect in terms of height with him as she started to approach him as Issei's mind went into overdrive in terms of finding out what is going on. That was until he heard Izumi start speaking to him in a sultry-like voice. You know, since you decided to tell another woman about marrying her, I think that you need a punishment for everything you've said to me. Izumi said as she stared into Issei's eyes. That is when Hikage walked up behind him, pressing her bountiful chest into his back, causing his mind to become mush. I personally believe that you need a punishment for betraying your promise to marry me, Ice-chan. Hikage said. As she said this, an unknown shiver went down Issei's spine as he turned his head to look at her as he felt her blow on his ear as he immediately went full lust mode as he did a 180 in terms of personality as he grabbed both women and ran off to his room. Slamming the door shut behind him. Lemon skipped, please read it on website. Izumi and Hikage woke up as they felt completely full that morning, and when they looked down, they saw small bulges on their stomachs. But something that was completely impossible happened as Izumi felt something bubbling up from her stomach as she jumped up from the ground and ran towards the bathroom in the hall. Hikage noticed that there was an unnatural energy within the girl as she just assumed that was her quirk that she talked about to her the other day. Looking over at Issei, she found him sleeping with his arms wrapped around her as he snored lightly when she felt something grab her breasts. Looking down at her chest, she found that even in his sleep, he will still play with her breasts. I swear, we will need to put something on you to prevent this from early morning wake up, she said as she pulled Issei off of her. When Izumi returned back into the room, she found Hikage getting dressed in front of Issei's sleeping form. Wow, just cleaning out my stomach felt really good, Izumi said as she changed her clothes as well. Well, at least you can live with the fact that Issei did in fact buck you silly and until you passed out, Hikage said as Izumi looked at her weirdly. I guess you're right. Well, me and Issei need to head to school for our last day before heading into the underworld tomorrow, Izumi said as Hikage looked at her concerned. Are you really okay? She asked as Izumi looked at her. What do you mean? Izumi asked, confused. Well, you just had a long night of Hex and you aren't questioning whether or not you got pregnant, Hikage asked. Nope, I took 2 pills last night to prevent that from happening. Why do you think I took so long to take a singular pill? Izumi asked as Hikage nodded her head. Well, I will need to check myself in the underworld. See you both down there, she said, smiling as she left. Is she gone? Issei grumbled out. Yes, she did. Just to see if you got her pregnant, Izumi said, smirking. Well, at least I know that you are, Issei said, smirking at her. Nope, I took 2 pills last night to prevent that, Izumi said, giving a peace symbol. You do realize what that symbol means, right? Issei asked, suggestively. No, what does it mean? I always thought that it was a symbol for great job, Izumi said, confused. That is something that happens at the end of a porno, Issei said, laughing his ass off. Once that was said, she chased him all over the house as she tried to knock him out once more. It wasn't until they left the house that Izumi started to feel really funny in her stomach as she just shrugged it off. Unknown to her, a single sperm managed to impregnate her without her knowledge. Meeting Tan and Rias returns. Izumi and Issei had been prepping their room to leave for the underworld, and when Issei's parents asked where they were heading off to, Issei only stated that he was moving out and on his own, with Izumi by his side. Which wasn't technically wrong, but he did inform them about the supernatural world so that they would know that they'd be safe since they were heading into the dragon's territory. As they finished clearing up their rooms, Issei Hyoudou had walked up the stairs as she stared at her son with sad eyes. I'm going to miss you, Ice, she said as she hugged her son. I know, Mom, I will miss you too. I'm pretty sure that Izumi will miss you as well. Also, I want to inform you about something, Issei said as he pulled out a pregnancy test from his pocket. What is that for, honey? Issei asked as she saw the plus sign on it. Mom, I'm going to become a dad soon, Issei said, hugging his mother with pride. At this news, she had asked who the mother is. Issei was stared at her with a deadpan look on his face. Who's the only girl here that could get pregnant from me? Issei asked as Issei thought for a second before coming to the conclusion of Izumi. How did that happen? I told her to take the pill, Issei said as she fretted over him. Well, let's just say that I'm very potent in the lust area and overpowered the pill that she took 2 of in order to make sure that it doesn't happen, Issei said as Issei stared at him in awe. I can't believe that your sperm has the ability to defeat a pill that was designed to make sure that a woman can't conceive a child, she muttered before shaking her head. This wasn't a time to get fretful over her third child that managed to survive childbirth. Please just make sure to call us. You are the third child we've had and the only one who survived childbirth. We are overprotective of you for that very reason," Miki said, hugging her son close. "I know mom, I will have Izumi tell me when we arrive in the dragon's territory to call you," Issei said as he hugged her as tears streamed down her face. Goro chose that moment to come in as he pulled out some baby clothes for him. "It's not much, but it will do for the baby when they're born. I'm not sure if a dragon baby will be capable of wearing these types of clothes, but be sure to be safe," Goro said as he hugged him. Izumi came out of her room as she stared at the scene in front of her as she remembered a time where she had that kind of bond. The memory of her mother being overbearing at the age of 4 and worrying about her all the time came to mind as tears unknowingly streamed down her face. "Don't just stand there, Izumi, join in on the hug," Goro said as he saw her standing looking at the scene before her with a fond look before crying. Shaking her head out of her funk, she walked over to them and joined them in the hug. It was heartbreaking to see her cry in their arms as she finally learned how to have a family after many years, but it was nice. Now they just had to clean up the tears. Midoriya said that her family were well known for their fountains of endless tears. Izumi and Issei stood before a magic circle as they looked back at the Hyoudou household. "Don't worry about us old folks, we'll be just fine. Make sure to take pictures of the dragons so that we can pin them on our walls," Miki called out as Goro nodded his head. As both kids disappeared in the magic circle, Goro looked at his wife before asking her a single question. "Want to try for one more?" he asked as she stared at him with a scared look. But Issei and Izumi, they appeared in the dragon's territory as they found a tall dragon who was purple in color, as well as stood at 15 meters tall on his hind legs. "Hello young drakes, I am Tannen the Blaze Meteor Dragon King. I am the servant to Mephistophiles. I am here to make sure that your stay within my territory is safe as well as perfect," Tannen called out as he huffed some smoke from his maw. "It's nice to see you Tannen, I'm Izumi Midoriya and I believe that I am a young dragon, but have different powers than most dragons you know about," Izumi said as the Dragon King nodded. "I have been made aware of the situation by Surzich's Lucifer. He has informed me as well as my faction about your circumstances. But worry not, for we will treat you like any other dragon," Tannen said as Izumi only got an image of Tenyu Iida from her past as the Dragon King was similar in words to the young man. "I'm sure you are already aware that I am this generation's Red Dragon Emperor?" Issei asked. "I was made aware, yes. And I will be in charge of your further training and that offer goes to you Miss Midoriya," Tannen said as Izumi told him to just call her Izumi. "I will join in on the training when I am done having my baby," Izumi said as the Dragon King nodded his head as he led them through the territory. "I personally asked for this land as it was the last one that held dragon fruits. It is a delicacy for dragons who feed off of it. It can even keep them fed for 3 days if they eat it once," Tannen said as he showed them where younger dragons were flying about as well as fighting one another. He showed them all over the territory as they neared the Gremory estate and there they met the Gremory family where Venelana Gremory and Zeodicus Gremory had apologized for their daughter's behavior. All in all, it was a fun day for the duo as Izumi decided to consult the vestiges of One for All about what she needed to do in order to transform. As they merely told her that they will disappear in a few days because the baseline of One for All was gone, they too would be gone leaving their quirks within her. But they only told her to use her imagination of what kind of dragon she wishes to use in order to transform. And it was shown really quickly that Izumi's choice in dragon was very similar to one of a legend from Dragon Ball Z. She chose Shenron from that show since Issei wouldn't stop pestering her about using the dragon form since he loved how its design was from the show and she couldn't just leave him hanging. They were walking around the place when they found out that the other dragons never had any kind of discrimination for those who were half-breeds, as well as dragon emperors that had human forms. So they got along just great. It wasn't until the end of the day that both were about to sleep when they felt a presence nearing them, causing them to get up from their bed in the territory and find someone who they hadn't seen in a few months. "It's been a while, Issei, Izumi," a voice called out as Izumi bared her fangs. We then look over the distance at what made Izumi bare her fangs as it was revealed to be Rias as she stood before their home. A smile on her face as she merely waved at them similar to how a neighbor would. "See, could you help one of my peerage members train Izumi? I really need her to do that before the Young Devils tournament. I need to have everyone prepared for when we return to Kuo Academy," Rias said, looking bashful. "I'm waiting for something that only you can give us," Izumi said as Issei moved in front of the pregnant teenager. "It's been a while Rias, so how has Iri-chan been doing?" Issei asked. "Izumi, I am so sorry about my actions back in Kuo. If I could take them back I would, but that is in the past and you can hate me forever if you'd like. And for you Issei, Iri-chan is doing fine, she's actually getting along with Ravel much better than when we first arrived. They are pretty much competing for Riser's attention at the moment." Rias said, as Issei looked over at Izumi. Well, since you apologized to me, when my baby is born, maybe I will think about training the little kitten. Izumi said, as she walked back to her room. Something wrong? Rias asked. It's been a long stressful day, and she needs to unwind in order to relax. Come back tomorrow and we can talk more, also bring Eri-chan so Izumi can talk to her again. Issei said, as Rias shook his hand. I wouldn't leave without her tomorrow. Rias said, disappearing into a magic circle. Looking over his shoulder, Issei found Tannen standing near a tree looking at him from afar, and he could tell the Dragon King was not impressed with him. Next time if you want her to leave, just say it. Because I will not allow them into the territory if you have bad blood with her. Tannen said, walking away. What time does training begin? Issei yelled to get the dragon's attention. Morning after breakfast, Tannen called back, disappearing in the horizon. Talks with Rias. Gremory training Kaneko and Eri-chan. Rias was seen walking down the road from the Phoenix family home that her peerage and riser had been living since her little marriage that she wasn't happy about. She still refused to have sex with the man, no matter how many times he tried to placate to her demands, as well as her wishes. He was truly trying to get on her good side, as well as help repopulate the devils, but she just wouldn't listen to reason and his perspective. But not only that, but she had to deal with Issei and Izumi living in the dragon's territory that is under the command of Tannen, the Blaze Meteor Dragon King. She had spoken to the young couple the previous day and found out that Izumi was pregnant with Issei's child, and Rias was extremely jealous about it. Her whole plan in getting Issei to join her peerage as well as save her from her marriage was almost as easy as taking candy from a baby. That was until Izumi showed up and changed everything. Izumi had become closer to Issei within months of her arrival into the world. She had been the only one who Issei trusted as more than a friend, and now she was carrying the young dragon emperor's child within her body. Everything was going to shit in terms of her plan, and she really wanted to get rid of her so that she could take Issei herself, but she really needed to time her moment to strike. She had been training in order to get stronger as well as powerful enough to kill a high-class dragon, and she was going to utilize this power she gained by killing Izumi. Izumi didn't know what was coming to her, but all Rias knew was that she needed to bide her time and wait for the woman to lower her guard to the point that she wouldn't be capable of sensing her presence and strike when she wasn't able to defend herself. But now she needs to placate to the girl's demands as well as try and become a friend to her. She really wanted Issei to be in her peerage, and if she couldn't have Issei, then Issei couldn't have a child with Izumi. Her plan was perfect, and now all she needed to do was wait for the perfect moment. Izumi was moving about her home with Issei at her beck and call as he tried to make sure that any and all movement was well calculated as well as not capable of hurting Izumi. He had been trying his best in order to be a good father figure for the baby to be, and he was thinking that he was doing a good job. Too bad Izumi was staring at him like he was a literal idiot, and she told him to leave his home and train with Tannen as she had been getting a bad feeling lately. When Issei asked her what the bad feeling was about, all he got in return was that it was one of her quirks, danger sense, as she was sensing someone nearing them with malicious intent. Listening to her, he left the home as he decided to train Kaneko, and Eri-chan as Izumi would be left all alone to fight Rias Gremory in a battle of talks. Izumi still hadn't forgiven the woman for her treatment of both her and Issei back in Kuo before her marriage with Riser, and to be honest, she was perfectly glad that the girl had got what was coming to her. So imagine her surprise when Rias arrived to talk to her and wanted to become friends with her. I just want to start over with you. You and I got off on the wrong foot and we need to stick together in order to get through the dangers that are coming up in the supernatural world at the moment. Rias said, trying to make a friendship with Izumi. Izumi wasn't an idiot though, she knew malicious intent when she was in middle school all the way into her high school years, and this was malicious intent that she was feeling from the young woman. In fact, Izumi had been feeling on edge since the Gremory heir had arrived on her doorstep, as she had originally planned on talking to Issei, only to have to talk to Izumi. Well, as long as you don't try and take Issei from me and Hikage, then you can become friends with them. I am staying as far away from you as possible. Izumi said, as she growled at the woman. Her motherly instincts coming in to protect her unborn child from the woman that had shown up in order to take Issei away once again. I promise you that I won't go after Issei anymore. I have learned my lesson in trying to anger a dragon. I don't want there to be bad blood between us. Rias said, trying to make sure that she can have Izumi lower her guard. I've told you once, and I will tell you one last time, I will not become friends with someone that I am feeling is a great threat to my child. Now get out of my home or face the consequences of a mother dragon in both heat and pregnancy, Izumi growled, yelling at the Gremory heir. As the woman ran off with an angered look on her face, Izumi growled a little more and went back into her home. Did she really think that she could poison my drink without me realizing it? Izumi asked as she dumped the tea that Rias had made for them in the sink. I swear that girl needs to calm down on the lust juice. Izumi said as she started to prepare lunch for Issei, Kaneko-chan, and Eri-chan. While Izumi was in the middle of preparing for the talks with Rias Gremory, Issei had arrived at the location of where he was going to train Kaneko and Eri in an empty field of grass. "Alright little ones, I am going to be your master. At the moment I am going to have you give me your 100% in fighting me. Other than that, make sure that you can land at least one hit on me and I will end your training for the day," Issei said as Kaneko rushed him immediately. As she threw punch after punch like a boxer would, Eri would stay back as she tried to blast him with magic from afar. It never worked against him since he was extremely durable as he trained with Izumi for weeks if not months before coming to the Underworld. As they were about to land their first hit on him, he dodged out of the way of both extremely fast, faster than they could see as he knocked them both out. "Damn, you both are a power fighter club, I almost got hit there. Drag, how much power was I using?" Issei asked as he commented on Eri and Kaneko's teamwork. "If I had to put it up to an estimate, it was about 4% of your power that you had to use to dodge their power. Maybe 5%. Drake said as he growled in happiness. "Seems like the training I'm getting from Tannen is seemingly working," Issei said, smiling at the two sleeping peerage members of Rias Gremory. Issei was starting to feel like an older brother to both of them since he had been thinking about training them ever since he noticed their power fluctuations in them. For Kaneko, he had the distinct feeling that she was similar to a small kitten that was overcharged on power, and Eri was like a young unicorn who was trying her best to use her power sparingly. All in all, he was very proud of their teamwork as well as their growth in power since he started their training that morning. At first, they couldn't keep up with him, barely using a mere percent of his power, and now they managed to get him to use at least 5%. That was a major jump in power for both of them. He was thinking about Eri-chan's ability to rewind their injuries when he got an idea for them as he left it on a piece of paper next to Kaneko's paw. Issei was walking back to his home when he noticed a deadly aura coming from the house as he ran inside of the building, only to find that his girlfriend and pregnant one at that, looking at a teacup with anger. "What's wrong, Izumi?" Issei called out, concerned. "Rias Gremory bucking came here and tried to kill me and our baby," Izumi said as she growled in anger and fury. "That's not okay, we need to tell Tannen about this. She's probably trying something again and she will not be allowed to get whatever she wants if she is allowed to come here repeatedly," Issei said, looking solemn. "Call Tannen over," Izumi said as she went back to making dinner. As Issei left the place, Izumi called Surzich's on her magic circle in order to inform him about his sister's motives. "This is Surzich's office, this is Grafia speaking." Grafia called out. "Grafia, this is Izumi Midoriya speaking. Can you send this message to Surzich's?" Izumi asked. "I can, what is the message about?" Grafia asked, concerned. "His little sister just tried to poison me with some tea earlier today and I am now fearing for my unborn child's life at the moment," Izumi said as Grafia audibly gasped. "I can't believe this, are you completely sure that she tried to do that?" Grafia asked, seriously. "I am completely serious, only she drinks the expensive teas from the human world," Izumi said as she hung up, leaving a completely disappointed Grafia and soon to be disappointed Surzich's in her wake. Once she finished her dinner as well as Issei's dinner, she felt some movement from her belly and immediately went to the nest she had made deeper in the cave. Once entering her egg room, she closed the door just as Issei arrived back at the house. "Izumi, I told Tannen to ban Rias from coming here." Izumi, Issei called out. "Grau-irg," Izumi screamed as Issei then realized that his girlfriend was about to lay an egg. Focusing back on his dinner, he decided that he wasn't going to distract her from doing nature's calling as he ate the katsudon that Izumi made for both of them. A few hours would pass by as Issei was preparing the home for him and Izumi to head to bed, but just as he was about to head into his bedroom to wait for Izumi, he heard a knock at his home's door. Walking over to it, he opened the door only to find someone familiar standing in the doorway. "So it seems like Drake has returned from the dead. I will enjoy destroying this generation's Red Dragon Emperor," the woman in front of him said before pulling her hand out and blasting the home in front of her. A new threat. Issei stared at the woman in front of himself as he stared into her golden slitted eyes. In terms of beauty, she was unmatched other than Izumi with her green curly hair and freckles. But in terms of beauty, in terms of others, this woman was unmatched as she had sky blue hair, golden slitted eyes that demanded respect, as well as a very large bust size that was showing ample amount of cleavage, and she had thighs that could kill if his head was squeezed in between them. "Are you going to leer at me or are you going to answer me, you bastard?" the woman in front of him growled as she smacked him with her sky blue tail, sending him into a mountain in the distance, as well as destroying his home that housed Izumi inside. Issei climbed out of the hole he was pressed into as he saw the gigantic sky blue dragon flying towards him with anger and fury in their eyes. "Drake, who is this dragon and what does she want with me?" Issei cried out as he activated his balance breaker. "I couldn't tell you if I wanted to, partner. I can't remember a dragon I had pissed off enough to warrant this." The only one who I think could do that would be the white one, but he is too honorable in order to attack your home, knowing that your mate was inside. Drake informed as he gathered his memories of his past. As Issei began his fight with the unknown dragon in front of him, he was basically tossed around like a ragdoll, as he couldn't do much against such a powerful being. As this was happening, Drake's breathing within the sacred gear was becoming more and more apparent as he began to mutter aloud as the dragon landed in front of him. You finally recognize me now, DDRAIG. The dragon in front of Issei growled angrily. Hello there Tiamat. I didn't think you'd come here. Drake said, stuttering, and Issei then thought he'd seen it all. So, you do finally recognize me. How long do you intend on keeping my treasures from me, you bastard of a dragon? Tiamat, who was introduced to Issei, growled. Mrs. Tiamat, I know that you probably don't want to hear it from me who uses the boosted gear, but can you please not attack me for something Drake did? I know that he did something to hurt your feelings, but can you not try and kill me? I'm going to be a dad soon, and I don't want to die without getting to know my kid. Issei said, as Tiamat looked down at the broken mask on Issei's face. What makes you think that you'd be saved from me? Anything that he has done will be passed on to the next wielder of the boosted gear, and if that means anything, Drake's problem is now yours, little Drake. Tiamat said, actually normally for a second. Well, can you at least tell me what he did so that I can probably mend that relationship between you both? Issei asked, as Tiamat in her dragon form BTW stared him down with mock anger. Do you really think that you will get out of the punishment that Drake deserves just by trying to appease me? She asked, angrily. Will it anger you if I thought that it would allow me to know what the hell is even going on? Issei asked, concerned. No. You will suffer the consequences of Drake's decision for not giving me what I wanted, Tiamat called out angrily. As Issei was seen running around with a blue dragon after him, some of the other dragons in the area started to feel a little bad for him. I know that Hyoudou is the newest member of our race with that Izumi girl, but now I feel even worse that he is fighting Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon King. The strongest dragon king of them all. One dragon said, muttering the last part. I know, right? He looks so cool running about with that limitless number of stamina he's got, another little Drake said, bouncing on the ground. It wasn't until a new feminine dragon showed up in the area to say something before they all scattered. I know that you all aren't trying to watch a fight between Tiamat and Drake. You do know how dangerous this will get back home. The feminine dragon said, as the young drakes all flew away as we focused on the female dragon watching the fight. This will end nicely if Tiamat could try and listen to reason. If this works, that Issei boy might add a new member to his harem. The dragon giggled as she flew away as the shouts as well as blasts from the forest in the distance were the only things that could be heard from the world. In the forest, Issei was hiding behind a lone tree as he tried to consult Drake about the literal ball of death, and fear was standing in awe of her destruction. Drake, now would be a good time to show me a new power-up in order to defeat her, Issei yelled in his mind. There is nothing you can use that is in my arsenal that at the power you have at the moment would save your life. Ask her if she wanted children, Drake yelled back in Issei's mind. Since when could you do that? Issei yelled back. Ever since you started doing that. Do you know how scary Tiamat is when she is in her mating period? This is the reason why I never gave her those treasures back. She would try and jump my ass in order to get some children from me. Even Albion is fearful of her, Drake called out. How are you fearful of a dragon king? She is literally millions of times weaker than both you and Albion, Issei screamed. You try saying that when your woman is in her mating period after she has that egg she was laying, then you should see why I am fearful of Tiamat, Drake cried out fearfully. If I was to see Izumi in that kind of problem, I would deal with it then fear later. Like seriously, how do you not know how to satisfy a woman? You are literally the oldest virgin in the world. Issei screamed out to Drake as the dragon started to literally cry in the boosted gear. Great, now he's crying about the situation I've gotten into because of his recklessness. Now what do I do? Issei growled in his mind. Where are you, Emperor? I need to make sure that you are killed for what Drake has done, Tiamat screamed. Where's Izumi when I need her? But even then, I don't think that she'd be capable of fighting Tiamat and surviving. What do I do? Issei mumbled a little too loudly as the tree he was hiding behind lost almost all of its cover as Tiamat loomed over him as she growled about to blast him with some karma-induced fire. Is it alright if I say that you have some very beautiful scales? Issei asked, a little fearful of his life. Yes, but I will not stop trying to kill you for it. It's actually nice to have one of Drake's hosts tell me that. Tiamat said, blasting the spot where Issei was. Issei was running out of places to hide as he was making his way through the familiar forest since it was so close to the dragon's territory. He was trying to come up with a plan in order to keep Tiamat at bay as she had been on his ass literally since the beginning of the night and he had no clue as to how she would kill him. But he didn't want to stay around to find out because she was closing in on him the entire time as if she knew where he was. Time to end this chaos karma destruction. Tiamat called out as a massive purple beam came out of her mouth as it came in Issei's direction. It wasn't until that moment that Issei was behind Tiamat that the Dragon King had thought something was wrong. She felt something being inserted into her hide that was nigh impossible to penetrate when she heard the sound. Penetrate, fuck. Tiamat said as the blade entered through her hide as it pierced one of her many hearts. As she stumbled around the area as Issei moved back, his face was filled with fear as well as determination in order to survive that he didn't notice something terribly wrong with her eyes. They were slowly gaining hearts in them as she was beginning to fall for him in the fight. Throughout the fight they were having, even though it was one-sided until now, he hadn't made a strike against her that was meant to hurt her or even harm her fatally. But right there, when he stabbed her in the heart with Ascalon, her mind began to wonder what life would be like if he acted like he did with Izumi towards her. She didn't like him per se, but she was slowly falling for the Dragon Emperor, who had gained the power of Drag Y Gotch, and she wanted to learn what made him tick. Even if it meant attacking him for no reason, she gave those treasures to Drag as a means of telling him how much she had wanted him to give her a child, and he brushed her off like yesterday's trash. And here this brat was, complimenting her good looks, even when she was in dragon form, not to mention he gave her humanoid body a complete once-over, making her womanly instincts take over, as she was glad that she still was able to be looked at without being scared of her anger. "What do you wish to have in order to survive my rage?" Tiamat asked, curiously. What? I thought that you'd want to kill me. But are you asking me to do something for you? Or are you asking me what I want you to do in order to survive? Issei asked, as Tiamat decided to leave her draconic form. Transforming back into her human form, she walked over to Issei as she walked around him as her tail whipped near his nose to give him a scent of her musk. As soon as Issei smelt that musk, he realized that she was in heat and wanted a mate for herself and wanted one now. So he did the only thing he could do at the moment. "See, can I give Izumi a call? I need to make sure it's alright with her first before allowing this to happen," Issei said, as Tiamat nodded her head. "Just be sure to make it snappy," Tiamat said, growling. As Issei called Izumi, he only got a voicemail as she seemingly wasn't completed with her egg laying, as Issei called someone else with a magic circle. "Issei, watch out, Tiamat is after you and I tried to keep her away as long as possible, but she knocked me out before I could do anything," Tannen called out through the magic circle. "Tannen, can you go to the remains of my home and see if Izumi is both okay and ask her if Tiamat can join my harem?" Issei asked. "Oh, okay, I think I can do that, just make sure that you're safe and don't start anything with that crazed Dragon King," yet Tannen called out. Well, we wait, how about we get a fire started? I am going to need to keep you company at the moment," Issei said, as he saw Tiamat holding her wound. Rushing towards her, he started to use his magic in order to help her heal her heart that he pierced with Ascalon. "You know, some people might think that you're weak if you help the person or supernatural being who tried to kill you," Tiamat said, as Issei focused on his magic. "I know, but when people think about that they will underestimate me. I don't care what people think about me or Drag, all I care about is making a good life fun, as well as have a harem. Don't tell Izumi that I said that. I have gotten better with my perversion in the previous year and I don't want to have her get angry about that," Issei said, as Tiamat laughed at him. "Alright, make sure that you know what to do with my body then," Tiamat said, smirking at him lustfully. A magic circle appeared near Issei's ear as he heard Tannen give him the news, as he heard a growling Izumi in the background. "Well, she said that she could join the harem, as long as she doesn't destroy her home again. But to make sure that this doesn't happen again, she wants Tiamat to know that if she does this again, she will have to live without Hex for another month and a half after you both do it. Also, she said that she would have Hex with you the moment that she does it to punish Tiamat. I don't know how you got a woman who would openly mock Tiamat in front of me, but she is a definite keeper," Tannen said as Issei blushed at the blunt mention of Hex. "Well, I guess welcome to the harem, I guess," Issei asked, as Tiamat just hugged him close as she wanted to do any and all things that were in her mind to him. But she relented because she needed to get him back to his mate in order to get her happy with him again. Izumi versus herself. As Issei was dealing with an angry dragon who wanted him dead, we find Izumi still in the process of laying her egg as Tannen was slowly making his way to their home. Izumi had just finished laying her egg as it was sitting snugly inside the nest she had made for it. It wasn't until a few hours later that Tannen had arrived asking if she was alright as well as open to polyamory, since Tiamat had stated that she'd rather have Issei give her children, since Drag was too much of a hussy to do so himself. She nodded her head and told him to let Issei know that if he gets another woman pregnant other than Hikage and Tiamat, they will have to talk to her. After that loose end dealt with, she felt another presence near her home as she walked outside of the house in order to see what was happening. What she didn't expect to see was that there was an old devil standing in front of her home as he looked at her intently. "I never met a dragon such as yourself. Pray tell, you aren't from this realm, aren't you?" the silver-haired old Cadre asked. "No, I am from an alternate timeline version of Japan. I have no idea how I got here, but I am doing my best to stay alive as well as find a peaceful life here," Izumi said, staring at the old man with trepidation. Don't worry about little old me, I just wanted to test your powers out. I never get the chance to see a new dragon appear out of nowhere and have powers just like that. The man said, using some magic in order to attack Izumi. Just as she was about to swipe the attack away, she noticed that her home was right behind herself, and as she ran back inside, she grabbed her egg and threw it towards Tannen's last known location. She made sure that her magic was used to make it sturdy enough that should it hit the ground, it would not crack and kill her child inside. Once that was done, everything went dark as the whole area surrounding herself had become a dark sphere of never-ending darkness voids. Waking up in the void, she had managed to sense her area within the underworld, and she was utterly surprised that she was still inside the dragon's territory. But then she sensed a power closing in on her location as danger sense activated, and she dodged the attack. As she turned around to see who attacked her, she was shocked that it was her younger self from her own world, as it was surprisingly male. He had multiple looks on his face as he stared at her with a look of fear as well as determination. "Who are you?" "My name is Izumi Midoriya, and I am a dragon of peace," Izumi said, introducing herself as her male counterpart stared at her at daze in his eyes. "My name is Izuku Midoriya, and my power is one for all. I have only mastered what little of the power that I could, and it wasn't enough to save everyone from Shigaraki," the Izuku said, as he looked sad. "What happened in your world?" Izumi asked, concerned for her alternate reality self. "He killed everyone in the USJ, and I was the only one left alive to tell the tale. I don't know how I am continuing like this, I never wanted to be a hero until I watched everyone die," the Izuku counterpart said, as he started to cry. "Why are you here then?" Izumi asked. "I just want it to end, I don't want to live anymore. My mother was killed, All Might was killed, Aizawa-sensei was killed, Kakakin was killed in front of me, I don't want to live anymore, I don't know how I got here, but please make me see my friends again," Izuku screamed as he flew at her using a mixture of float and base one for all. Izumi let out her draconic wings as she flew towards him as well, pulling out a fist in order to punch the other in the face. "Tetruoi at Izuku started as Izumi roared at him. Supernova strikes Smayash, they both screamed as their punches hit the other, creating shockwaves all around the darkness surrounding them. As they were pushed back from one another, they launched at each other once again as they created more and more shockwaves, and Izumi started to land more and more punches on the younger boy. He was wearing a dark green jumpsuit that had been clearly worn down, as his eyes were now duller than anything that she could remember herself suffer from. His moves were also choreographed very predictably as he moved to punch her when she felt herself get punched in the gut, as she noticed something completely off about this version of herself. He increased his speed to match hers incredibly fast without muttering anything, so being cautious she watched as she saw his legs brighten up as he gained more electricity in order to attack her. As soon as he was in front of her, she smiled sadly as she placed her hand in front of his face, as it went from complete calm to pure unbridled fear, as a blast was sent in his face, knocking him back a few hundred meters. Launching at each other once again, they were like shooting stars in the sky from the speed they were going at, since every time they clashed, an explosion of force would be seen in the sky of the void. Izumi could tell that this version of herself had learned how to use the power of one for all faster in his world, since he had no one in order to train him how to use it better. So she decided to show him some tricks in order to make sure that he learned more about his quirk. She made certain maneuvers that caught him off guard as he watched her move in action faster than he could predict, and he saw her land behind himself thanks to danger sense. As he slowly turned his head, he was met with a kick to the stomach as he coughed out blood as he moved back as his eyes bugged out. He wasn't going to like what he was feeling when he got back to his world, and he didn't know that when he dies here, he will be dead in his own world. Fighting between the duo lasted for hours, as they were shown to be breathing heavily, since they knew each other's fighting styles through and through, although Izumi's fighting style was more refined than that of Izuku's, but they were heavily breathing. This was the best fight they both had, too bad it was a fight to the death, and Izuku was watching as Izumi apologized for not going full strength. As he watched her begin to glow, he got himself into a sloppy fighting stance, forgetting his exhaustion. He watched Izumi go from being barely shorter than him to being taller and thinner than Ryukyu when she was in her draconic form. But there were some key differences in this draconic form, as Izumi's form was similar to Shenron from Dragon Ball Z in this world, and forgetting completely about this battle, Izuku had gotten out his notebook as he was about to ask about her power before he was killed, instantly barely registering the danger that was happening. Outside of the ball of voids, the silver-haired man was watching the fight with rapt attention as he saw the two of them nearly the same in power in their human forms. But it seems that Izumi was hiding her true power, since she was transforming into a dragon from that show that his grandson had seen when he was smaller with his mother. He was surprised that Izumi preferred a draconic look like that, especially since it doesn't provide any kind of attacking. Never mind, she just swiped the other Izuku's body clean in half as she diced him to pieces without any warning, as well as killing him quickly without any pain. He would have to force her to fight someone on the level of Grendel, since that dragon was complaining about not having a dragon to fight. He was starting to annoy him with all his pleas to fight someone strong. Maybe this fight will put him back in shape as he kills this Izumi character. Shaking his head in exasperation, he dispels the ball of voids as he makes a magic circle and leaves the area just as Izumi appears with a look that borders on being heartbroken about herself. Unknown to him, Izumi had seen the memories of the alternate Izuku as he died in front of him, and she ate his remains. She had no idea that he would send her his powers as well as memories, but he made sure that she was strong enough to protect her life there in that world. She even remembers what he told her at the end when she completely merged their consciousnesses. Please make sure that you keep your child as well as the ones you love safe. Be the hero that I couldn't be, please. I don't want you or another me from an alternate timeline to feel the pain I did. Before his personality disappeared into her memories that she had of her life. Softly landing on the ground, Tannen had arrived with her egg like she had planned, and he saw the look in her face as she was crying silently. Placing her egg down, he kneeled over her and pulled her into a hug as she cried in his arms about the memories that she was given about Izuku Midoriya, the hero who had been broken so badly that he just wanted to die. Izuku Midoriya's memories. I was on the bus to the USJ with my classmates, and we were excited to see who was going to be teaching our class about rescue operations today. I never knew that our day would be the last one I would have with my classmates for the rest of my life. Not only that, but I would lose the first friends that I ever had within minutes of arriving at the USJ. I saw Pro Heroine 13 arrive from the building itself as she talked about the pros and cons of having powerful quirks, mostly that even though dangerous quirks like hers can be used to save people, they can very much kill people as well, if not being careful about their quirk. I had never wanted to be a hero, but Kakin had trained me with him in order to become heroes together, and after I had saved him from that sludge villain about a year ago, we had been thicker than water, kind of close. He was my brother in all but blood, but that day would be the last time I would see him as well. I never got to see where he landed because they never told us what happened. We were all teleported away into the USJ as we were all separated, and I landed in the mountain zone with Tori Hagakure. She had taken off her clothes and landed on me when we fell inside the mountain zone. When we walked around the area, we found that there were some villains looking for us, and I told her my plan of taking them out quietly since I couldn't use the full power of my quirk without hurting myself. We got right to the plan as we took them down. We never thought that Todoroki would be in the area when we were suddenly split apart. And that was when I never saw her again in the USJ. If she died, I never knew since she was invisible, and when I found Todoroki, he was being burned alive by a flaming villain who had taken him down easily. He tried to use his own flames, but even then, they only powered the villain up as he consumed them and threw them back at Todoroki. I tried to save him, but it didn't work as Todoroki used his last bit of ice to keep me away. I smashed at the ice as I watched him become bones from the burning. I was tearing up from watching my classmates die in front of me, and I had no clue as to what was happening. It wasn't long until I arrived at the plaza and found Momo, Jiro, and Kaminari sitting on the side of the plaza, watching as our teacher takes down some villains, unaware that there was a hand villain sneaking up on them without a sound. I ran over to them to try and get their attention when a big black monster had appeared and without warning knocked me into a wall, seemingly knocking me out. It wasn't until everything was over that I woke up to the corpse of my mentor All Might, as well as the dead bodies and ashes of my classmates all over the place. There was only one thing I could do in that moment, as a teacher of the school found me sitting in front of a pink and black skin-tight bodysuit. Izumi and Issei meet Surziches. Izumi and Issei were inside their little cave as Tiamat was with Ajuka talking and raiding games as per their contract. They had been very busy since Issei added Tiamat into the harem for him, as Izumi had stated that she didn't mind her being added to it. Issei had always made sure to run his ideas by her, and she was happy about that since she really cared for his heart. It wasn't until a week after the whole debacle of killing an alternate universe version of herself that Izumi had decided to talk to Surzich's Lucifer and Graphia Lucifuge about the world she had come from. She never wanted anyone but Issei to know about where she came from, since that would mean that she would probably be sent back to her homeworld and kept from Issei himself. She finally met someone who cared for her like she cared about them. She didn't want to lose that, but that was a risk she was willing to make if she wishes to stay with Issei and the dragon's territory. Izumi could be seen training with Issei in the backyard of their home when Tiamat had returned and joined them on their training, since she had nothing better to do at the moment. Tiamat could actually see that Izumi was incredibly strong for a young Drake. If she had to hazard a guess, she was nearly as strong as most ultimate class devils when they went full power at the moment. But she could be so many times stronger than this if she trained hard enough, which was why she was training Issei and Izumi at the moment in order to make sure that they're strong enough to be able to damage her. They were launching their strongest attacks at one another when Tiamat had jumped in the way of the blasts and a huge smokescreen was shown between the duo. As it cleared, Izumi saw Tiamat standing near her as she told the young Drake to take a break while she trained Issei even further. It wasn't right to have the woman be stronger than the man in the relationship. The man had to be the one to comfort the woman in a relationship, so she really needed to calm down on her own training in order to get that comfort from Issei. And so here Izumi is, just resting on the ground as she thought about her future with Issei, when a familiar voice came up from behind herself. "You're down in the dumps worse than the last time I saw you, what happened?" The voice asked, as Izumi looked behind herself only to find Hikage. "I'm just thinking about what my alternate universe version of myself told me. His world was horrible, he watched his friends and mentor die in front of him, his teacher was the only one who survived the battle at the USJ, with Heroine 13. But only a month after that, his teacher was killed, whilst the other teachers were injured but not killed, since he had managed to gain enough power to fend off the villains during his training camp. But he lost his homeroom teacher in the fight against the villains, but the worst part about it was when he lost his own mother in front of himself. I can't stop thinking about my own mother, she died way before his did, and now I just can't help but wonder why my mom died so early on than his," Izumi said, as she started to unknowingly release tears from her eyes. Hikage had pulled the girl into an embrace as she had tried to calm the girl down by saying sweet nothings in her ear as Izumi silently cried. She didn't want to cry, but all these memories of her friends dying in front of her, as well as the ones she knew were alive from her reality, she couldn't shake the fact that they were now dead too since they were looking for her. She really needed to get this off her mind, but she just couldn't, so Hikage decided to call someone in who could help her completely whilst being impartial to everything. Surzich's Lucifer was a devil king that was more powerful than all the devils combined, and the only devil who was similar to his own power was the descendant of Lucifer himself, Rias Lucifer. The evil devil had always wanted chaos and had been the one to bring it during the Devil's Civil War, and Surzich's had managed to defeat him in Lucifer's city when he met the bastard. Now he was in the man's own position as he was taking care of the civilian devil's needs, as well as bills that needed to be sorted through, since he was now in charge of the underworld. Never in his life had he been called to deal with something so trivial, so imagine his surprise when Hikage had called him and urgently told him to come to the dragon's territory in order to assist her in calming Izumi down, since she had been undergoing a panic attack, as well as memories of an alternate universe version of herself. He wanted answers as to what the hell was going on, so he called Grafia over to come with him as they headed over to the dragon's territory. As they arrived in the territory, they soon found Hikage holding Izumi close to herself, as the girl had been crying for a while, since Hikage was seemingly at her wit's end with calming the girl down. "Surzich's-sama, please help me, Izumi can't stop crying," Hikage called out as Surzich's walked over to Izumi as he placed his hand on Izumi's shoulder. As soon as this happened, Surzich's noticed that Izumi noticeably had flinched in his grip on her shoulder as he kneeled down to see her face. She had a glassy look in her eyes, and her eyes were dulled, which meant that she was undergoing a few certain memories from either her own past or this alternate version of herself's past. "Can you tell me what happened in order to put her in this state of being?" Surzich's asked, as Hikage told them what happened from what Izumi told her what little of. And to hear that Rizavam had come to her in order to test something on her didn't make him feel good, especially since the man was known for his experiments as well as his dangerous outlook on life. He didn't need another volley running around wanting to kill the bastard on their own, since he bucked up their mind. So Surzich's did something that he believed would help a little bit in helping him understand the situation. "Grafia, place a barrier around me and Izumi. I'm entering her mindscape to see if I can help her get around these memories," Surzich's said, as Grafia nodded, making the magical barrier. As soon as that was done, Issei noticed the barrier around Izumi and ran over to see Grafia standing near it watching the inside diligently. "Is Izumi alright?" Issei asked, concerned. "She's having memories of her alternate reality version of herself plague her mind. She needs to get stronger mentally in order to make sure that this doesn't happen again." Surzich's-sama has been in there for about a couple minutes trying to get into her mind. Grafia said, as they both watched as inside the barrier Surzich's focused on making his way into her mind. Surzich's could only see darkness inside the realm of Izumi's mindscape. He was impressed that her mind was truly empty at the moment, that was until a flurry of colors had appeared before him. And stood in front of him was 9 people, one with white hair and green eyes, another with blonde hair, a scar on his nose and grey eyes, another with a weird hairstyle, as well as clothing being the same weirdness. The fourth one had a scar on the left side of his face looking terrible, and he had white hair with green eyes, same as the first man. The fifth man was a punk-looking dude who had a biker jacket on and was bald with dull blue eyes. He seemed to be a delinquent who was extremely powerful. Now the sixth one had a weird jean-like jacket that was up to his lower mouth as his eyes were closed so he couldn't see his eye color, but he was surprisingly calm. The seventh one was the most aggressive one out of them all, since she had been in front of a small girl who seemed to be at least 6 years old. The woman had black hair and black eyes as well, her figure was well endowed, and she was snarling at his presence. The eighth one was the most intimidating one, since his muscular frame made him taller than Surzich's himself, as he had a smile on his face, as he stared at the Devil King with an almost fearless smile on his face. The current Devil King had watched as a new member of the Eight walk forwards, as he stood in front of the Devil King, with a determined look on his face. "Who are you and why did you enter Izumi's mind?" the young boy asked. "My name is Surzich's Lucifer, and I am the current Devil King of the Underworld where your host resides. I was called over to her since she is suffering from an alternate universe version of herself's memories," Surzich said, introducing himself with a bow. "Why have you come into the mindscape? We are not hurting her in any way, shape or form," the first man asked as Izumi looked at him behind the group. "I was called over here in order to help her with whatever memories she was being haunted with. I didn't think that I'd meet all of you inside her mind," Surzich said, staring at them. "Well, we can talk about this in a different area. Izumi can stay with 7th and keep her away from Surzich's here. We have a lot to talk about to this man and don't think that we don't know who you are, Lucifer-san," the first man said as Surzich stared at the man before nodding. They walked to a different area when Surzich looked at the part of a building where most of the 9 users of this power sat. The only one missing was the person called 7th. "So you must be wondering who we are," the first man said as Surzich nodded his head. "My name is Shigaraki Yoichi and I am known as First. I am the first user of One for All," Shigaraki said, looking at Second. "I am Shiryu Bakugo, and my quirk is Gear Shift. It wasn't powerful in the time where I was the user of One for All, but I was the one who mentally damaged All for One," the one named Shiryu said, staring at Surzich's. The third one sitting next to Shiryu stood up as he looked Surzich's in the eyes as he nodded his head. "I am Nabataman Kura, and I am the third user of One for All, and my quirk at the time of being alive was Fajin, and I was the one who managed to damage All for One for the first time before he healed from his wounds," Nabataman said, smirking at Surzich's Lucifer. "My name is Hikage Shinomori, and I am known here as Fourth. I was the only one who never fought the being known as All for One. My quirk in question was a powerful one named Danger Sense. It allowed me to know of someone holding malicious intent towards me and allowed me to fight them off whilst knowing where they were based on my quirk," Shinomori said, sitting back down. The bald man stood up and walked over to Surzich's as he stared the Devil King in the eyes as he showed no fear of the current Devil King. "I am Dagoro Banjo, and I am the 5th user of One for All, and I have to say that I am impressed that your power at the moment is suppressed at the moment. I would be fearful if you didn't hide your full power. My quirk was Black Whip and it was extremely powerful for me in my heyday, but at the time I could only use 2 whips at a time with a powerful right hook," Dagoro said, sitting back down. The blonde muscular man walked over to Surzich's as he stood looking down at the Devil King and Surzich's smirked at the smiling man. "I am All Might, but you can call me Yagi Toshinori. I am the 8th user of One for All, and I was the only one who defeated All for One in my time as the symbol of peace," All Might said, smiling. "What happened to you if you said your time is symbol of peace?" Surzich said, as All Might visibly deflated when a lookalike of Izumi had stood up. "My name is Midoriya Izuku, and I was the strongest user of One for All, but I never was able to cultivate the power enough to even fight All for One since he survived All Might's attack against his head," Izuku said as he stared at Surzich's pulling out a notebook. What is your quirk, sir?" Izuku said as all the tension in the room had been pushed away as Surzich's shook his head. "Young Midoriya, I am quirkless in your world's term of things. But my power is control over destruction. I have mastered it to the degree that I have unlocked a full power version of myself that is very destructive to the world. In the world you all are in I am referred to the Crimson Satan, also the 9th strongest being in the world," Surzich said as everyone looked at him in awe. The Izuku though was in deep thought starting to mutter as Surzich stared in wonder. "Don't worry about him, this happens from time to time. We've grown used to it," Yoichi said as he smiled at Izuku. "What happened to Izumi? She was suffering from this Izuku's memories if my memory serves me right," Surzich said as Yoichi sighed and the Izuku in front of him visibly deflated and became very sad. It wasn't my intention to show her my memories. I wanted to show her what happened to my world. But my memories of what happened came first," Izuku said as he looked away. Surzich walked over as the other users had stood up when the Devil King did and they watched him as he ruffled Izuku's hair. "I'm sure that it wasn't your fault, but I really need to talk to Izumi and help her get over these memories of yours," Surziches said, as Izuku showed him to where to find Izumi and 7th. Time to make sure I can bring her back to her boyfriend. Surziches said, sternly to himself before entering the room as everything became bright. Surziches talks to Izumi. Surziches walked over to Izumi and 7th as she hovered over the seemingly 5-year-old girl as she was crying over seemingly nothing. He walked over to the duo as he sat down next to Izumi as he heard her mumbling about something that happened in her past. Mama, where are you? Why you're supposed to protect me, where did you go? Izumi mumbled as Surziches watched from a short distance. 7th then gained a curious expression on her face as she stared at Surziches and finally after what seemed like an eternity of waiting, she finally spoke. Why are you helping Izumi? She asked, guarded. I was called to see what is happening to Izumi. She was stated to be suffering from certain memories from your world's 9th user of One for All. And the memories are affecting her more than we realize, so I was called out here to help. Surziches said, staring at Izumi. It was here that her mumbling suddenly ended as she turned her face to look at Surziches as he got to see what her eyes looked like as a child. They were big as well as trembling as her pupils were pinpricks in the center of her eyes as she stared at him with sudden fear as well as trepidation. Izumi, I am a father of a young child. Can you tell me what is haunting you at the moment? He asked, making sure that Izumi sees where his hands are. She looked at his hands for a very long while before she started to talk about her life in her old world, how she was announced quirkless to the world, how her best friend Kaken had turned on her and beat her within an inch of her life ever since the prognosis. How her peers had also began to enter her life as bullies as well as jerks, how the teachers never did anything to save her from any and all punishment that was given to her for simply existing. How she met the #1 hero of her world and how he saved her from an early grave and how he shattered her dreams almost as fast as he saved her. She even told him about how she saved Kaken from the very same villain that had attacked her, only to be scolded by the heroes at the scene because she was quirkless and was in their way. All the way until the moment that she was in UA high school and how she made new friends that never cared about her mumbling habits as well as her muttering. She even told him about the death of her mother and subsequent abandonment of her father even though she never saw him since she was a mere baby. I was on a work study and I was with my senpai Tagada-san, he was called L. Lemillion. I was on a patrol with him when we found Iiri-chan for the first time. As she was running out of an alleyway from someone. I had no clue who she was running from at the time, but it wasn't until that I had been forced to leave her behind that I found out who she was asking me to save her from. Izumi said, as tears had come out renewed. She stared at him with fear as well as sadness in her eyes as Surziches began to speak to her. When you found out about the man, you were hurt that you could have helped her. And blamed yourself for letting go of her the first time around, huh? Surziches asked, softly as Izumi nodded her head not trusting her own words. We went back a week later after finding evidence that she was in a certain building owned by the Yakuza and when we attacked, they knew we were coming from the beginning. Everything went to shit the moment that we raided them, heroes and hero students were defending each other from the Yakuza left and right. I was only able to get as far as I did because of One for All, and Lemillion Senpai had a quirk that made him intangible, and he went on ahead as he fought Chisaki Kai, known as Overhaul. He managed to get him to absorb one of his men in order to fight back against my senpai, but one of Overhaul's men pointed a gun at Iiri-chan, forcing him to protect her, and he lost his quirk as he continued to fight Chisaki. But he was injured badly because he lost his quirk. It wasn't until Sir Night-Eye had arrived that Mirio senpai had been allowed to take Iiri-chan away. He didn't get far as Iiri-chan left him in order to come back to Overhaul as she wanted all of the damage as well as people hurt trying to save her to die. It was here that I arrived and fought Overhaul on my own. It was dangerous as well as scary. I managed to take him up into the sky as we fought there, but when the battle was over, I had run out of energy to keep going. And that is when Himiko Toga had appeared and attacked me from behind, knocking me out. And I showed up in this world, a couple years older than I was in my world. Izumi said, as Surziches stared at her with sadness in his eyes. Well, at least you know that Iiri-chan is safe. She had been being trained by Ravel-chan in order to become a better servant for Rias-chan. Surziches said, as Izumi stared at him. She tried to kill me the other day. Izumi said, as Surziches nodded his head. I will make sure that she doesn't do that again. In fact, I will personally make sure that she never goes near you ever again. Surziches said, as Izumi's eyes began to water as she ran to him as she cried in his arms. As he held her, she trembled in fear at the fact of dying. She never wanted to make people hate her. She didn't do anything wrong, besides protect those she knew were good people from those she never really liked in the first place. As Surziches pulled her away from his chest, he saw that she was seemingly asleep as he looked at 7th as she was smiling at him from afar. You did better than all of us managed to do. Good job, she might actually look up to you as a father figure because of your presence in her mind. 7th said, as she disappeared in a mirage of black smoke. It was here that Surziches saw something that Izumi never told him about. It was the day that she asked her best friend out. Izumi could be seen walking towards a room with the nameplate of Katsuki Bakugo, except it was written as Bakugo Katsuki. And it showed Izumi standing outside of the door of the room as she mumbled all her thoughts and got them together before knocking on the door. "What the hell do you want?" Deku Katsuki called out as he opened the door. He was shirtless as well as a very good physique, which was supplied by the memories of Izumi when she thought about him. "See, can I go out with you, Kaken?" Izumi asked as she got her shit together in order to ask him that. "Ha, what the hell are you talking about? I'm not straight, you shitty nerd. Hell, nobody would ever love a useless buck like you." "You klutz," Katsuki screamed in her face as he slammed the door in her face. From the memory of the event, Surziches watched as Izumi's mind was in disarray. She walked back to her room as she sat on her bed as very disturbing thoughts entered her mind. Maybe he was right that day. Maybe I should have just killed myself before coming here. My death wouldn't affect anyone anymore. My mom is dead. My dad doesn't ever come to see me and I think is dead as well. No one even talks to me anymore. Memory, Izumi said as she curled up in a little ball on her bed. Why can't I just have someone who will be friends with me? Izumi thought to herself. She would be interrupted from her self-deprecating thoughts by a knock on her bedroom door. Opening the door, she would find Tenya standing by the door as he asked her if she would like to have some dinner with him and the others. It was here that Surziches noticed the glint in the boy's eyes. There was love in them for Izumi. But it was very well hidden as Tenya's face became solemn as he looked harder at Izumi's eyes. "Are you alright, Izumi?" Tenya asked, worriedly. I'm fine. They just had a bad daydream," Izumi said, waving her hands around. It seems like she had a small crush on this Tenya person in her world. But her love of this Kaken character was too big for her to go after this young lad. He was strong as well as seemingly is her only friend in this world. Surziches muses. As the memory plays further, he finds himself chuckling at how Izumi's peers had always made it known that her spending more time with Tenya could be seen as the duo dating as she became a blushing tomato whenever that topic came up. Looking deeper into her memories about how this small crush happened, he found it as he saw her being saved from the zero-pointer robot at the entrance exam for her school at the beginning of the year. He smiled as he saw how she saw Tenya as a knight in shining armor, but noticed how when she looked at him, it seemed like Tenya was a scary individual as he kneeled before her. "Are you alright?" he asked as he pulled her out from under the wreckage. I'm fine," Izumi said as Surziches noticed how she was extremely skittish back then. "I think that is enough." Skimming through her memories, he thought to himself as he pulled away the memories as he looked down to see a teenage Izumi. What she really looked like instead of a slim-built woman in his world, he saw that she was really short as she had long bushy curly green hair, as well as really big doe green eyes that showed him her soul. She had been looking at him for seemingly a while now as he stared at her back. She became a blushing mess at being found out as she looked away and muttered something that was caught by his hearing. I didn't mean for why you to see that, dad," Izumi muttered. Smirking, he ruffled her hair as he told her that she should really keep her thoughts inside her head. Beeping like a princess in danger, she placed her head in her lap as he stood up whilst holding her. He used his magic in order to block the memories of the previous ninth user of One for All from entering her mind, and as he looked at Izumi, she stared at him like he was the #1 hero himself. "That should make it more bearable to be alive in the world. I am going to be leaving you to your own devices. Have a good evening with Issei and Hikage," Surziches said as he disappeared from Izumi's mind. Chaos Brigade attacks Norse meeting. Izumi woke up from her nightmare with Surziches standing over her and Issei standing off to the side with a fearful look on his face. Issei walked over to Izumi as he sat down in front of her and pulled her in for a hug, and she started to tear up at the fact that Issei hugging her was just so warm and felt safe. For some reason it felt better to be in his arms, as it felt like he would protect her better than her own family ever could. Hell, it felt better than the fatherly hug that Surziches had given her in her own mind, as it calmed her down to the point that she would be capable of thoughts. As Izumi was still tearing up, Hikage walked over and hugged the duo as well, while Surziches and Grafia had decided to leave the area, whilst also leaving an invite to the newest meeting between the Norse and the three factions. A few minutes would pass as Izumi was crying in the arms of her friend and boyfriend, and she finally felt like the tears were lessening in order for her to breathe properly. How's my egg doing?" Izumi asked as she stared into Issei's eyes. "Well, how about we go check it out?" Issei asked, smiling at her. Following him back to their home, they went into the room where Izumi's egg was just sitting in a small nest as the egg slightly moved a little. It wasn't much, but it showed that it was nearing the moment of cracking and releasing the child within the egg into the world. It was a few days later that Izumi had been thinking about things in the factions of the world. She knew that the Norse were some of the strongest beings in the world, second only to the Hindu religion. So the meeting between the Norse and the three factions within the biblical faction as a whole was needed if they needed allies in order to deal with the Chaos Brigade, who were becoming an even bigger problem for them as a whole. Izumi looked at the invitation to the party for the meeting, and she looked at Issei as he smiled at her with a wholesome look on his face. Hikage did the same thing as she loved the look of confusion on Izumi's face. She had even brought a good friend of hers from the human realm that she saved from freed Selzen. Asia Argento, an excommunicated nun who had been seen healing her from her fight against a Chaos Brigade member that she had been trying to escape from. The said girl was sitting next to Izumi getting her hair done by the dragon, who seemed to melt in the aura of the blonde-haired girl whose hair she was currently braiding. "Can someone please tell me why I am getting my hair braided?" Asia asked, concerned. "We are going to be heading to the meeting between the three factions and the Norse faction. They will be adding the Norse pantheon into the ranks of the peace treaty in order to have some more allies to take on the Chaos Brigade," Hikage said as she smirked at Asia, allowing the girl to blush. Oh, and that was another thing altogether. Hikage, during her tenure of healing under Asia, had noticed that she had been bisexual, so she would give the young woman some love from time to time. She even brought the girl into her hex capades with Issei whenever she brought him over from annoying Izumi. To which Izumi told her many times over that she was happy for the silence from time to time, since she was getting annoyed with Issei's incessant bragging about his power soon going to be more than hers over the few months that he was training with Tannen. So whenever she brought the red dragon over to her place, they had a lot of fun with each other as Asia fumbled her words towards the current Sekiruyute as he managed to bed both of them. It was about a week before the meeting between the two factions as they were preparing for both war as well as the meeting. Izumi had been preparing food for everyone there since she had been cooking a lot lately since coming to this world. She was really surprised by the amount of time that had passed since she first came here. It was only a mere few months since she first came here and now she was cooking for the kings of hell and the leaders of the Norse faction. All in all, it was going to be a great day. Famous last words. As of right now, Izumi and Issei are in the kitchen as they look over the food items inside the building as they checked off everything that was made. Issei managed to get all of the drinks needed in order to satisfy all of the guests that were going to be coming here. Izumi also heard that the young devils would be coming here in order to meet one another again as they did their meeting with the Norse. Izumi sat with Issei near her as she held her egg close to her heart. She was going to be giving the egg as much love and affection as possible in order to make sure her baby has all the love coming back tenfold. Izumi would do something that her mother couldn't for her back in her world, actually be alive to raise her to become the best person she could be. The only one she had for herself was her childhood friend and bully Katsuki Bakugo, and he was a major bad influence on her since she cursed, sometimes causing all balance in her class and her old world to fall apart. As the leaders were preparing to arrive, she had the fortune to meet one of the Norse leaders who were eating the food as well as looking at the young women in the party. This seems like a fine spot to sit," an elderly man said as he held himself with grace and power. Oh, are you one of the guests here?" Izumi asked, looking at the elder. "I am indeed. My name is Odin and I am the leader of the Norse faction. I have been searching for a good talking partner and I couldn't help but see you without your mate," Odin said, smirking at her. "Well, he is meeting some other people here. He is a chatterbox if you get to know him, not to mention, I don't mind the fact that he is perverted. I just wish he didn't have perverted tendencies to look at other beautiful women," Izumi said as she looked away. "Well, does that make you jealous that he looks at other women?" he asked. "A little bit, it makes me feel inadequate for him. I know that he loves me and is my mate, but sometimes I feel like he looks at the other girls because of the fact that I don't look good enough for him to look at," Izumi said as she hugged her egg closer. "That is a problem. Well, I guess I can take my leave. Sorry if it sounded like I wanted to split you both apart. I just wanted to get some gossip done and help you with your panicking mind," Odin said, walking away. As Izumi watched him walk away, we find Issei walking around the place as he finds Rias and her peerage walking over to him. "Hey Issei, I hope that Izumi is treating you well," Rias called out. "She is fine, I don't know why she has been sad lately though. I guess she is getting jealous of me a little though," Issei said as he looked away. "Oh? How so?" Rias asked. "Well, I keep looking at other women, but it's mainly because some of the women here look absolutely beautiful. I can't help but keep my eyes on them since their beauty is so attractive at the moment," Issei said, smiling at some of the girls in the corner of the main room. "Well, if you ever want to get away from Izumi you can come to my place whenever you want," Rias said as she stared at him. "Okay, I might want to check in on Eri though, Izumi cares a lot about her," Issei said as Rias got a new plan in her mind. "Oh? Why does she care so much for her?" Rias asked. "Eri reminds Izumi of herself as a child. Eri though is the only difference of having a quirk and different hair and eye color. But their personalities during their past were similar as children," Issei said as he walked towards a building argument. A few hours later, Izumi and Issei are seen sitting next to one another as Izumi hugs Issei from his side. She had been getting touchier-feely lately, and he didn't know why. The leaders of the factions were going to be meeting one another soon, and they had to make sure that the meeting went without any problems. But with Izumi leaning on him, it was starting to get a bit hard whenever he saw her egg slowly sliding from her grip and about to hit the ground. He placed the egg on the ground as he allowed Izumi to fall asleep on his shoulder. He smiled as he saw the content smile on her face. Sometimes he always thought of what would have happened if he was the servant of one of the devils here. Would he have met Izumi? Would they have ever became so close? Who would he become if Izumi wasn't there to keep his perversion in check? He would never know since she was there for him since the beginning, and he wouldn't have it any other way since he got together with her and Hikage, and surprisingly Asia. Auden had entered the room with Surziches as they announced that they were going to become allies in the upcoming war, again the Chaos Brigade, as well as stating that they would be added to the peace treaty between the factions of the biblical proportions and Norse. But it wasn't until later on that night that they were attacked by the Chaos Brigade, trying to make sure that the meeting didn't take place, not that they weren't too late for it. Even Loki, the god of mischief, had shown up and demanded that his father didn't team up with the likes of mortals, and demanded the start of Ragnarok. He had no idea what that meant until a light beam shot through Loki's chest. Looking around for who the culprit was, he found Izumi standing behind the god as she stared at him with half-lidded eyes. "Stop talking and get out of here," she slurred as she tossed him out the window of the building. It wasn't long later when more enemies started to show up as the entire meeting was attacked by members of the Chaos Brigade, more importantly the hero faction. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.